Ladies and gents, boys and girls, happy Monday, September the 4th, 2023. Hope you're all doing well. Chris Phillips here, your host of the Daily Crow of the Spurs Up Show. Happy Labor Day to you all, for all of you who are celebrating, wherever you are, whatever you're doing. Thank you so much for tuning in and hanging out with us here on this Monday. I see Cameron Blassingame, Brendan M., Bob the Builder's in the building as well. Shortage, what's going on? Also, those who are in the Big Cock Club Discord, head over to the TDC Questions channel, the TDC Questions channel, to be sure your questions are answered there. Guys, we've got a lot to get into, a lot to discuss here on, this Monday as South Carolina falls to the North Carolina Tar Heels, 31-17 over the weekend. It's a therapy Monday here on TDC, guys. We'll get to that again. We got a jam-packed show, here on this Monday. Hour number 3, our Q&A Power Hour. We'll take your questions, your comments, your calls as well at 843-790-3377. And hour number 2, we have my good friend Chris Doering of SEC Network as we talked all things week 1, including Florida's loss to Utah, South Carolina's loss to North Carolina, and much, much more from there as well. And, of course, guys, in our hour number 1, we're talking all things SEC football. Gamecocks football was a very busy weekend. And, of course, tonight it concludes as you see the cap. Clemson takes on the Duke Blue Devils. I believe it's an 8 o'clock kickoff on ESPN. Going to be a ton of fun. What a jam-packed weekend, guys. 5 straight days of college football concluding tonight. Really excited for it and, looking forward to watching that game. I know there's a lot of shows today that are taking off, which makes sense. It is Labor Day, but I felt, you know what? It is necessary for us to chat here on this Monday after what happened over the weekend. I've got tons of thoughts I want to get out there. Tons to discuss. And, of course, guys, it is game week for week 2 for South Carolina. Gamecocks will take on the Furman Paladins in the home opener at Williams-Brice Stadium this weekend. But, again, guys, in the meantime, also, hey, let me start off the show, by the way, by saying this. Thank you all so much to those of you who tuned in to the TSUS postgame call-in show presented to you by our friends over at A1 Air Quality Services, guys. We had a fantastic turnout after Saturday night's game. At one point, we got up to 500 live viewers. And you check right now, guys, the YouTube video is up just under 7,000 views for that post-game call-in show. So to say it was a massive success is an understatement. So again, guys, just want to say thank you all so much for making that a success, and really excited and looking forward to doing that all season long after every single Gamecocks football game. Again, I see you guys. I see the comments rolling in. It is Therapy Monday. Josh Reichley says on a cool note, he met JC at game day. Very cool stuff. Very cool stuff. Guys, normal TDC, by the way, this week, noon to 3 p.m. Eastern time every single day. The only thing that will change, because JC Sherbert is out of town on vacation, we're going to flip-flop our guests this week. Of course, today we've got Chris Doering. Normally we have JC on Tuesdays. We'll now talk to JC on Wednesday, and Chris Marler will join us tomorrow to break down all things SEC football, Gamecocks, National College Football, everything in between as well. So just changing that up, guys. But, of course, the normal schedule this week, normal podcast schedule, all that good stuff. And with that being said, we start off Monday morning quarterback, week 1. And what a week it was, guys. A jam-packed weekend of college football that all began on Thursday night. And, of course, guys, or late last week, we already talked about the Florida-Utah games, the Missouri-South Dakota. But a jam-packed week 1 of SEC football. And one of the biggest takeaways was Cupcake Weekend truly lived up to the billing, right? Outside of the headliners, which were South Carolina, North Carolina, LSU, Florida State, which, of course, guys, we're going to discuss those games more in detail here in a second, especially Gamecocks and Tar Heels. The closest margin of victory in these games, I'm going down the list, it looks like it was 30 points. Kentucky beat Ball State 44-14 in a game that appeared much closer than it was, but not a lot of competitive ball games, right? A lot of SEC teams getting their seasons started off on the right foot against lower competition. And you look at the action that took place on Saturday and, of course, late Sunday night. Like I mentioned, we already talked about on Friday the results from Florida, Utah, Missouri, and South Dakota. And you start. Tennessee takes down Virginia. Final score of 49-13. I thought Joe Milton was impressive in this one. I thought, you could still see there the big question mark over the offseason was, can he throw the changeup, right? Can he put touch on the football? We've all heard all offseason about the arm strength, and, it's almost getting nauseating at this point. Hearing people ask Joe Milton, oh, man, what's the farthest you threw a football over the course of the offseason? How far can you throw the ball? And, he's rattling off these numbers, 90 yards, what have you. It's like, we get it. The guy has a strong arm. He can throw the football very far. And you saw that on display in that game, right? I thought Joe Milton's numbers could have been even better if he got help from his wide receivers, right? Didn't get a ton of that early on in that game especially. But I think there's definitely still question marks, right? Now, a lot of these teams, by the way, there are. When you're playing lesser opponents or a 4-touchdown favorite, what have you, how much can you really take away, right? But I think certainly there are still major question marks with Joe Milton putting touch on the football, throwing the changeup, and as you play better competition, you get into SEC play, you get into these fourth quarter ball games, these competitive ball games, and those windows, they start to tighten up. Is Joe Milton going to be able to make those big-time throws that Tennessee needs? I think the physicality that Joe Milton displayed, I think that's something else that jumps off the page to you. I'm not sure Hendon Hooker really had those attributes a season ago, and that brings a new dynamic to the Tennessee offense as he ran for a pair of touchdowns as well. The thing, guys, that jumped off the page to me is the physicality of Tennessee in the trenches, right? Running the football and especially stopping the run and getting after the quarterback. I mean, Virginia's quarterback was under duress all game long. And we talked about in the offseason the improvements they had made on the defensive side. You could definitely see it. And guys, I mean, it looked like a Tennessee team that sort of just picked up where they left off from last season. An explosive offense, and I think a defense that, again, could take a step forward. But this looked like Tennessee from a season ago. Now, again, they're going to play better competition. We're going to learn more about Tennessee as these first couple of weeks go by. A lot of these teams, guys, like I mentioned, you're playing this lesser competition. We've never known less about these football teams than we do right now because of transfer portal and new additions and how these pieces come together. But I would say if you were trying to draw up the ideal start, the perfect start for Tennessee in this 2023 season, I'm not sure that you could have put together a better start for them. When you think about all the new pieces offensively and the question marks on defense from last season, the secondary, what have you, I know Virginia was not very good, but that performance they put on, very reminiscent of last year. And if Joe Milton continues to develop, right, use his physicality, but develop in the passing game, and I'm not sure touch is one of those things. It might be a situation of he is who he is, but Tennessee's offense is a machine, and if they've got that defense to go with it, they're going to be a tough out for anybody and everybody in the SEC this season. We move to Lexington. Kentucky takes down Ball State 44-14, but this is one of those games, guys, you've really got to look beyond the final score when you look at this football game. Call it for what it is, right? Like I've been very high on Kentucky in this preseason. I told you guys after SEC Media Days, they were my stock up team, if you will, and I really thought Kentucky could make some noise, and they still could do so, right? They still absolutely could do so. I was really surprised by the quarterback play in this one. And Devin Leary, it looks like he came on strong in that second half. The numbers improved, 18 of 31, 241, a touchdown, and a pick. But, I mean, if you look at this game, guys, this game was guided by a lot of Ball State mistakes. You know, this game was sort of your typical sloppy season opener. A lot of miscues in this game for Kentucky. Again, they benefited off a couple fumbles, a scoop and score, a kickoff return for a touchdown, what have you. And so I thought the athletes, they were on display for Kentucky. I mean, Ray Davis in the backfield, he's a real dude, averaged 8 yards per carry, 2 touchdowns on the day for him. I don't think Kentucky's going to miss a beat at the running back position. Dane Key, Berrien Brown, both those guys are freaks. Berrien Brown with the big kick return for a touchdown. I thought Kentucky's defense, I mean, you look at the way they stopped the run. That was the big thing, of course, winning at the line of scrimmage. They were very good. But Devin Leary, is he going to live up to the hype, right? I just did not think, although they won by 30 points, I'm not exactly sure it was as impressive a victory as we were expecting in regards to the quarterback position. And that was, guys, that was the theme of week one, right? All these new quarterbacks and all these new OCs and what do the offenses look like and what have you. I expected more out of Devin Leary, though, so we'll have to see. Is this just something where, it's week one, it's his first game, and in Lexington, and he'll get better as the season goes, or is it going to be real growing pains for Devin Leary? Maybe they have to lean on that running game more than they expected. But all in all, guys, I mean, again, you take on Ball State, take it with a grain of salt, but we definitely need to see more from Devin Leary in these coming weeks. We move to Fayetteville. Arkansas takes down Western Carolina by a final score of 56-13. The KJ Jefferson and Rocket Sanders show. And this is one, guys, when you've got that type of dynamic duo and you take on a lesser opponent like that, it really, really makes it tough for anybody, right? You look at this game, it's pure domination. I mean, Arkansas was up 21-3 after one quarter, 35-3 at halftime, which again, guys, is what you would expect. KJ Jefferson, very efficient, 18-23, 107, 3 touchdowns. Do not sleep on Arkansas this year. I think Arkansas is a team, again, anytime you have the type of duo they have with a KJ Jefferson, a Rocket Sanders, and I was really stunned the amount of people who for some reason got upset over the weekend when I said KJ Jefferson is the best quarterback in the SEC. I mean, guys, we can debate it, but I mean, are you trying to argue he's not top 2 or 3? Because he absolutely belongs up there when you think about the dynamic nature of his play, right? What he can do with his legs. I think he's improving as a passer as well. How about this, guys? Check out these numbers for Jaden Wilson in this ball game. 3 catches, 83 yards, 27.7 yards per catch. He was a specimen on the outside for Arkansas as well. Armstrong for them at wide receiver also had a big day. So, I think this is an Arkansas team. Again, take it with a grain of salt, a blowout victory, but it just reaffirms or continues to reaffirm you love what they have at the quarterback, the running back position. You love what they have in KJ Jefferson and Rocket Sanders. As we continue to get down the list, guys, Ole Miss takes down Mercer. Final score 73-7 in this one. Jackson Dart looked incredible. Again, guys, it is Mercer. Ole Miss able to do whatever they wanted. I thought it was interesting to see Spencer Sanders get in there and get a touchdown for the Ole Miss Rebels as well. They'll get a much greater test in week 2 when they take on Tulane, which I think is going to be one of the best games of week 2. But all in all, successful week 1, and you love to see, again, Jackson Dart. We talked about it last week, right? Building on, by all accounts, based off those in Oxford, a really big offseason. And Jackson Dart shining. He certainly did that in week 1 in this game. Auburn takes down UMass 59-14. Unfortunately, this was one of our big losses in our gambling plays, right? I had UMass plus 35. Auburn's defense really shutting down the UMass quarterback, the kid that transferred, not even going to try to pronounce that last name, but kid that transferred from Clemson and Georgia Tech. I thought the defense was fantastic. I thought Peyton Thorne was efficient. Robbie Ashford, 3 touchdowns, I believe it was, for him on the day. He's going to have a big role and a big involvement in this offensive attack for the Auburn Tigers, even though, again, he loses that quarterback job, and I know our friend Jake Crane will have much more on this later in the week. Do not sleep on the way that Robbie Ashford can help out Auburn. They roll in that one, though. Again, guys, 59-14, the final score, a successful debut for Hugh Freeze. Mississippi State taking down Southeast Louisiana, final score of 48-7. The thing that jumped off the page in this one, guys, we talked about a new era in Starkville. The air raid is gone. They're going to a Kevin Barbay offense where it's going to be much more of a balanced attack. How about the rushing numbers in this one, right? Mississippi State finished 14th in rushing a season ago, and obviously that comes because you have that air raid attack. But you look at Mississippi State, Jarquavius Marks, who I think is a fantastic running back for the Bulldogs, 19 carries, 127, 6.7 yards per carry, and 2 touchdowns in that ball game. How about Mike Wright, guys, the former Vanderbilt quarterback? He had 5 carries for 95 yards, 19 yards per carry. How about them? A long of 53 in that ball game. Mississippi State already finding creative ways to use him. But as a team, they rushed for over 200 yards, right? Showing already that balanced attack. Will Rogers having to do much less, 20 of 29, 227, 2 touchdowns. I know that the faithful down there in Starkville, I talked to our good friend Stingray Steve. They were less than thrilled, with the offense. Felt like it's better. I think it's one of those things, though. You're a Mississippi State fan. You've got to get used to no air raid attack, right? It's not going to be something. I think it's going to be more the growing pains with the fan base of, like, you're so used to just slinging the ball over the yard and chucking the ball downfield, and, like, your brand of offense is going to be a little bit more boring than you're used to, right? It's going to be a little bit more boring than what you've done in the past. It does not mean, though, that it cannot and will not be effective. So the fan base got to get used to that. All in all, though, a big win for Mississippi State in game number 1 for Zach Arnett. We move to Athens. Georgia takes down UT Martin. Final score of 48-7. And I understand Gamecock fans especially, but fans in the SEC, they want to look at this one. Oh, my goodness. It was 17-0 Dogs at halftime. What's going on with Georgia? Carson Beck, he's not all that great. They've got question marks with Mike Bobo. Do not fall victim to that line of thinking. Do not play yourself and sit here and think that, oh, Georgia, they're not good anymore. Don't allow yourself to do it. Remember last year, Georgia at times, they like to play with their food, right? Sometimes the Dogs, they like to play with their food before they eat it. And I think that's what happened in this game with Georgia. Kirby Smart talked about it at SEC Media Days and all throughout the offseason. Who is Georgia's biggest competition? It's Georgia. Flat out, it's Georgia. It's battling complacency. And so, in these week 1 matchups, you're taking on UT Martin. It's a team lesser than you. You've won back-to-back national championships. This game was about Georgia fighting complacency, not them fighting UT Martin or proving they're better than UT Martin. Carson Beck came on strong late in this one, 21 of 31, 294, a touchdown in the ball game. I thought the one thing that was surprising to me was the lack of run push for Georgia. When your leading rusher, Kendall Milton, has 53 yards on the ground, that is surprising. That surprised me a bit. You saw Georgia in some second and short, third and short, if you will, struggling to get a push and open a hole and get their guys that first down. Again, guys, I don't look too deep into it. This is a Georgia team. You're opening up with actually back-to-back cupcakes. Georgia has, ironically enough, Ball State this weekend. Poor Ball State, back-to-back SEC games they have in their non-conference. They've got this time to iron some things out, to iron out the kinks. Kirby Smart's going to get right back to it today and continue to hammer it in Georgia, that no complacency, you can't take your opponent lightly. Do not fall victim to, again, the school of thinking that, Georgia struggled. They're not what they used to be. I don't buy that for a second. Brock Bowers, of course, he was impressive as well. 5 for 77, 15.4 of all the guys on that roster. He looked like he was the most fired up to play in that game. And then Georgia defensively, guys. I mean, they were dominant yet again. Did allow over 100 yards rushing, but Georgia, again, dominated that game. They started that game start to finish. And while it was a slow and sluggish start, Georgia closing out strong. They scored 31 points in the second half of that game. And like I said, guys, I would warn against reading too deeply into that and saying, Georgia's not very good anymore. Again, dogs sometimes like to play with their food before they eat it. I think that's what Georgia did in that ball game. Texas A&M takes down New Mexico. Final score 52-10 in College Station. And, of course, we had all these question marks, guys, about the Bobby Petrino offense. How was it going to work in College Station? The answer apparently was really well. Connor Wegman, 18 of 23, 236, had 5 touchdown passes. Heck, even Max Johnson, the backup, came in 6 of 9 for 41 and a touchdown as well. We mentioned it last week, guys. If they get good quarterback play, which Connor Wegman in game 1 so far so good, they've got the weapons on the outside. They've got an elite group of receivers if they get good quarterback play. Evan Stewart, 8 for 115, 2 touchdowns. The Noah Thomas kid, 6 for 74, 3 touchdowns for him. Aniyah Smith, 3 for 40. You look in the backfield as well, guys. I think finding that true RB1, they had 3 different ball carriers with 6 carries or more. Daniels went 7 for 51, Moss 6 for 26 and a touchdown, and Owens 7 for 25. But they've got the big uglies up front to pave the way. And I think that's the big takeaway, though, is just the offensive attack. Bobby Petrino, what Connor Wegman did. They get a much stiffer test this week against Miami. I think that's the one you look at and say, okay, we need to see the offense and the progression and what they've done to this point. But so far, so good. An encouraging sign in week 1 for the Aggies, no doubt. Vanderbilt, how about this? A 34-point margin of victory for the Commodores. They take down Alabama A&M. They are 2-0 on the season. Of course, they'll get their first big test against Wake Forest this weekend. 47-13. They take down Alabama A&M. And, of course, guys, the level of competition, you have to take that into account. But the fact of the matter is this, Vandy's 2-0, man. A.J. Swan, 15 of 29, 194, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. You like to see more efficiency from him, especially against lower-level competition. I tell you what, this Cedric Alexander kid, this true freshman, he started to impress me. 12 for 87 and 2 touchdowns. Clark Lee, I asked him about the running game or lack thereof, losing Ray Davis at SEC Media Days. He mentioned they had some guys they felt confident about. I think you're seeing that with Cedric Alexander. McGowan continues to turn in good performances, 6 for 70. Will Shepard, 6 for 62. So they've got some weapons in the backfield on the outside, but we'll really find out something about Vanderbilt this weekend for sure when they take on Wake Forest. Alabama takes down Middle Tennessee 56-7. And reading between the lines here, guys, is really the important part. Quarterback play. Listen, while it is lesser competition, I don't think it's fair because there's going to be some people out there that write this off as, well, they played Middle Tennessee State. Who cares, right? It doesn't matter. Throw those results out the window. It's not fair to have spent the entire offseason saying that, or let me start over. It's not fair to have spent the entire offseason questioning Alabama's quarterback position, questioning, do they have a quarterback? What's it going to look like? Building up the quarterback position as the storyline of week 1 for them. How does that shake out? What have you? And then when they play well, completely discounting it and dismissing it because of the level of competition. I think you can acknowledge what happened while also saying the real test will be week 2 against Texas. But give credit where credit's due, man. Jalen Milroe, I think as expected by most, he was named the starter on Friday afternoon for the Alabama Crimson Tide. And, guys, he was fantastic. 13 of 18, 10.8 yards per completion, 194 total passing yards, and had 3 passing touchdowns as well. And he truly looked the part of QB1, right? And you think about, too, the athleticism. I mean, guys, he steps on the field number 4 is the best athlete for the Crimson Tide. But again, what impressed me even more so was the touch on the deep ball. I mean, that really is what stood out to me, guys. A couple of those deep passes he had, those deep balls, putting it right in the breadbasket, that is an encouraging sign, right? As long as he's able to take care of the football, I think Alabama may have found themselves a quarterback. Now, again, guys, we're going to find out a lot more against Texas. That's going to tell you as these windows start to shrink, as the pressure increases, as the competition gets better, we'll find out more about Jalen Milroe and if he's cut out for it and, what he's really made of. But, even 7 carries, 48 yards, 2 touchdowns as well. The composure, the poise that Milroe showed, it looked like he felt like, I am this team's QB1. I deserve this position. A lot of that, guys, is mental. And I think the thing that stood out, too, you saw the snap that went past Jalen Milroe. He didn't panic. He didn't fret. He didn't dive on the ball. He picks it up. He makes something out of nothing. And, guys, the last time we saw a quarterback making those type of plays, they made a Netflix documentary about the kid. And I'm not saying Jalen Milroe's Johnny Manziel by any means, but he's got that type of athletic ability. And so Alabama, hey, so far so good. They may have found a quarterback. I mean, Jalen Milroe, I don't think anybody's ever questioned the athletic ability. To me, what jumped out, though, is seeing the touch on those deep balls. I'm not sure that's something I had really seen before. And so now if we continue to see that against Texas, if Jalen Milroe plays well, and of course, guys, we'll break this down later in the week when we talk about all these week 2 games. But if you continue to see that type of performance when they take on Texas and beyond, I mean, all of a sudden, guys, especially with the results that took place last night in Orlando, I think Alabama reinserts themselves in that conversation, and they become, I think, the favorites in the SEC West. Speaking of, guys, we're going to skip over South Carolina, North Carolina, because I've got a lot to get into later in this show, talking top takeaways and more reactions to that game. LSU and Florida State. And listen, guys, I'm here to eat crow. I did not think Florida State was worthy of all the hype they were getting. I thought LSU would be clear-cut, head and shoulders above LSU and dominate that football game. And my goodness, guys, Florida State really showed they are a serious college football playoff contender in 2023. I mean, and I'll say this too, on the LSU side of things, similar to last year, I do not think that week 1, losing this ball game, I don't think it defines your season that LSU cannot achieve their goals. I don't think this means LSU can't win the SEC West. I know they've got some real issues, especially on the defensive side. The secondary looks like it's still a problem. They could not get stops on 3rd downs. The usage of Harold Perkins, I know they're trying to do different things with him at linebacker, but it was very suspect. It was very questionable. And then offensively, guys, a lack of a run push, right? Just 113 yards. I mean, Jaden Daniels, your leading rusher, 15 for 64, 4.3 yards per carry. I know there are question marks on this LSU team, but I left last night's game more so high on Florida State than all of a sudden being down on LSU. FSU's got dudes, man. I mean, they've got dudes all over the field. First off, they got a dude at quarterback. Jordan Travis, 23 of 31, 342, 4 touchdowns, 1 pick. He was masterful in that ball game. You look at what they got on the outside, guys. Keon Coleman, I mean, my goodness. 9 for 122, 3 touchdowns. You look at Johnny Wilson, the giraffe on roller skates, as our good friend Jake Crane likes to say. 7 for 104. That dude is damn near unguardable, man. He's nearly unguardable. Name that Gamecock fans don't want to hear, Jaheim Bell. Guy had 3 touches. 2 of them went for touchdowns. 2 for 49, receiving 1 touchdown. Had a rush as well for a touchdown. Trey Benson in the backfield, 12 for 47. But, I mean, the list goes on. This looks like a vintage Florida State team. when you talk about just athletes on athletes, they've got dudes up front offensively and defensively. And I mean, Florida State, guys, it was no secret before or anything. But how about laying the blueprint for you can go out in the portal if you've got the resources, if you've got the bag to throw around, you can love it, hate it. This is college football, man. This is college football, going out in the portal and snagging top-tier talent. And look at what Florida State's done. Look how quickly they've turned it around in Mike Norvell, man. Last year, they laid the groundwork, right? They had that year 3 where they popped in year 3 under Mike Norvell. And now year 4, guys, they go back to the portal. They go mining in the portal. They land a couple of big fish. And all of a sudden, guess what? AP poll hadn't dropped yet. But, I mean, they're one of the best 2 or 3 teams in the country right now. And I think they all of a sudden, they become a college football playoff favorite. And I will eat crow here on this Monday because I doubted FSU. I was not sure FSU was worthy of all that hype. FSU's for real, man. And I mean, you look now, they just took down a beast in the SEC. Who in the ACC is beating this team? Maybe Clemson. We'll see what they do tonight against Duke. Anybody else? I don't see it, man. I do not see it. Florida State, they'll probably have to beat Clemson twice because I think it'll most likely be FSU Clemson in that ACC title game. And, of course, guys, in case you missed it, the ACC, it is the top 2 teams. There's no Coastal and Atlantic anymore, but, man, Florida State's for real. And I know LSU fans, they're reeling today. They got to pick up the pieces. But, bro, FSU, they are for real. And I think all of a sudden a college football playoff favorite undoubtedly, and LSU can still achieve all your goals. They got to get some things shored up defensively. That's the biggest area I see. I think they'll be fine. I think Jaden Daniels still one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC. You know, I love what they have with Brian Thomas Jr., Malik Neighbors, and I mean, they're still loaded. They're still loaded. They got to get it shored up defensively, though. The secondary, for whatever reason, is still a problem. The way they're using Harold Perkins, I think not having Mason Smith, I think that may have taken a toll as well. But defensively, LSU got to get some things shored up. Like I mentioned, guys, we'll continue the conversation talking South Carolina, North Carolina later in the show. But I will say one thing that I wanted to touch on. How about TCU and Colorado? Man, Deion Sanders was right. And you got to give credit where credit's due. I'll just say this about the Colorado thing. It seems like folks either love or hate Deion. But I'll say this. I respect where Deion Sanders is coming from. In the sense of, I'm not he handles media. You can, if you like that, dislike that, that's up to you, right? That's up to you how you feel about some of the mannerisms and way Deion handles things. But in regards to changing and flipping a roster and there's like 80 or 90 new players on that roster, guys, with NIL, and this is something that I think makes especially the fanatics, right? But this is something that makes some people feel uncomfortable. But with NIL, guys, let's face it, this is now professional football. This is no longer an amateur sport. This is no longer a student athlete. It's about winning. It's a cutthroat business. Coaches are getting paid. And guess what? Now players are getting paid. And so it's one of those things. Maybe you can't do it if you're a Shane Beamer or you're if you're not Deion, you can't be so flamboyant about it and open about it about, we're coming. Hey, we're not keeping everybody. Some of you got to get out. But I respect the school of thinking, guys, because it's about winning. And there's some guys that, it's like managing a roster in the NFL, man. It's like managing your salary cap. And if you've got guys that aren't very good on your roster and they have scholarships, but you need to make room to get better players in the portal, hey, see ya. You're out. That's the way it's going. If players are going to get paid, that's the reality you have to accept. So I respect it. I respect Deion's method of operation because that's the point we're at right now in college football where players are getting paid. and it's all about winning. And coaches aren't getting 4, 5, 6. They're not getting 8-year grace periods. They're not getting a decade to get it figured out, right? And so it's up to you to get this thing turned around quickly. I respect that Deion says, you know what? I don't care if you're on scholarship, if you're not, whatever. If you're not very good and we need to make room for somebody better, we're kicking you to the curb. You've got to find somewhere else to play. Bottom line, end of story. You can love it, you can hate it, whatever. This is the reality now of college football. And guess what, guys? It worked. Because Colorado just took down TCU, who was in the national title game last year. It worked. So do not be surprised if you don't see more teams, more coaches gravitating to this school of thinking where, you know what? Hey, I'm getting paid. You're getting paid too. We got to manage a roster. If you're not good enough, you're not up to snuff, we got to win. Move on. Move on. We'll take these funds. We'll allocate it elsewhere. We got to get some good ball players. Winning over everything else. That's going to be the motto, the mantra, and that's the world of college football we are in at this point. Guys, let's jump into a quick break. On the other side, we'll keep the convo rolling. I'll dive into my top 5 takeaways from Saturday's loss to North Carolina. All that and more on the other side. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is brought to you by our friends at Carolina Cigars. Carolina Cigars has been in operation since 2008, recently taken over by the Peterson family in 2020. Whether you're new to the cigar scene or whether you've been enjoying cigars your entire life, Carolina Cigars has the expertise and knowledge to make your visit to their shop enjoyable. Stop by for a fine cigar and experience their classic cigar lounge where people come together, share conversations, and become friends. So if you're into cigars and you're on Hilton Head Island, you really do need to go by and see them. They offer same-day shipping nationwide, free delivery island-wide for weddings and all special occasions. They're also proud to offer premium cigars at 9 outside humidor locations around Hilton Head Island, and they have special events throughout the year as well. They want to talk to you. They want to engage. They want to share with you their cigar selection they're very proud of and their beautiful cigar lounge. When you're in the Low Country, there's only one place for cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, and there's only one place I get my cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, Hilton Head Island's premier cigar merchant. Come and share your passion. It's all here at Carolina Cigars. Give them a follow on Instagram at Carolina_cigars, or give them a call today at 843-681-8600. That's 843-681-8600. Smoke them if you got them, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya. The Daily Crow is also sponsored by Rhine Law Firm, LLC, principally managed by James R. Rhine Jr., located at 1350 Ashley River Road, Suite 650, Charleston, South Carolina, 29407, serving the greater Charleston area.
Watch your Dougie, ho.
All right, guys, we're back here on this Monday, September the 4th, 2023. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Hope you're enjoying your Labor Day, and thank you all so much for making us a part of it. With that being said, guys, we'll keep the conversation rolling. And yes, it is indeed Therapy Monday. And I've got 5 big takeaways from South Carolina's 31-17 loss to the North Carolina Tar Heels, a game in which I knew was a coin flip game. I knew it was a 50-50 game, could go either way. But the manner in which it happened was nothing short of stunning. We'll start, guys. My first big takeaway from South Carolina's 31-17 loss, the offensive line is an even bigger question mark, an issue than we thought. It is hard for me to comprehend, guys. You know, we knew coming in, right? And I look back this morning, actually, when we do our position unit preview series and we hand out grades and stuff like that. You know, it's always funny to go back and look and see, you know, there's some people that think I'm just being mean and I'm a jaded Gamecock fan, or he's a Clemson fan in disguise, or he's this. Look at that slapdick handing out that grade or this grade, what have you. And, you know, guys, I don't want to be right in those situations. I don't want to be right in those scenarios. But we talked about it over the course of the offseason. And it's something I'll never understand, why South Carolina's coaching staff thought this was going to work. An offensive line that returned 50 less starts from a season ago. You lost your center in Eric Douglas, an all-SEC guy in Jovan Gwynn, and Dylan Wanham, one of your starting tackles as well. You then lose Jalen Nichols, your best offensive lineman, in the spring game. And you go out and you add transfers from Western Illinois, Mercer, Yale, and Charlotte. And you thought plugging those guys in, FCS bodies, to play a grown man game at the SEC level was going to work. We all had high hopes that, you know, that unit could gel and Lonnie Teasley could get this group ready to play. And so coming into week 1, guys, and it's crazy. What did I say all last week? That, you know, UNC, they don't have the bodies up front to expose South Carolina's weakness, their deficiency, which is that offensive line and the defensive line as well. UNC doesn't have the caliber of bodies you'll face in the SEC to expose that weakness and make life tough on South Carolina in the trenches. And sure enough, exactly that happened. I mean, it is hard to fathom what we watched from the offensive line. 9 total sacks. Just 11 rushing yards, minus 2 rushing yards. If you factor in the sacks, guys. Spencer Rattler running for his life the entire game. Your leading rusher, DeCarrion Joyner, 12 carries for 23 yards, 1.9 yards per carry. With sacks, guys, as a team, you averaged negative rushing yards per carry. We knew the offensive line was more than likely an issue coming in. It's a major problem I mean, it's and none of the takes that I have, guys, none of the takeaways, none of the commentary I have is me trying to be an overreaction, reactionary, be over the top after week one. But I just don't know where the answers come from on the offensive front. I do not know where you go, guys, because you look down that roster. I mean, there's no all-SEC player waiting in the wings. The only thing you can really do, you can try to shuffle some guys around. But, guys, it wasn't even just guys like Sidney Fugar who look like they don't belong at this level. Flat out. You had guys on that offensive front, Jackson Hughes, Fugar. They don't look like they belong on this level. They don't look like they belong playing SEC football. I mean, heck, you had a guy, even Tyshawn Wanamaker, who's been on campus for years, who was getting beat like a rented mule. Who do you go to, though? Where are the answers for this offensive line? Is it Marquis Anderson, a true freshman? Is it Big Tree Babalade, a true freshman? Is it Trovon Bowe? I don't know where else you go, guys, because it's not like there's a bunch of fourth and fifth year guys waiting in the wings who have played a lot of football, who have been okay. Like, there's nobody in this room who's been ever worth a damn for South Carolina. So you got a bunch of guys who have been on Carolina's roster who have been terrible. Then you got a bunch of FCS level guys. Then you got true freshmen. Where do the answers come from? And we can say scheme around the offensive line all we want, but, like, that is much easier said than done. Do you really actually think that this coaching staff was foolish enough to believe the offensive line was a strength? There's no way they came in thinking that. And so why wouldn't you believe that you'd scheme around the offensive line in week one? I know it's one of those situations you don't know what you have until you see it on the field, you see it on tape, but my goodness. And so that's my biggest issues. Teams, they make their greatest jump and improvement from week one to week two, but I don't know where the answers come from, guys, because a couple of these guys, you're asking some players on the offensive line to do things I don't know that they're capable of doing. And I will never understand how South Carolina was not able to go out in the portal and get some Power 5 talent on the offensive line. How were they not able to go out in the transfer portal and land some impact dudes? Because you know what? Hey, blame the offensive line. But Shane Beamer and that coaching staff, they ought to shoulder some blame too, because guess what, guys? They're the ones that put that group together. They're the ones who tried to sell Gamecock Nation on, yeah, these guys from Yale and Mercer and Charlotte and Western Illinois, they'll do the trick. They put that group together, man. And so we knew coming in the offensive line, there was a good chance it was going to be another rough year, finish outside the top 100 rushing, what have you. It might be a bigger issue than we even gave it credit for. That D-plus grade I handed out about a month ago for the O-line, that feels far too courteous. And moving forward, I just don't know where the answers come from. At this point, it almost feels as if, you know what? You might have some young guys who are supremely talented. Maybe they're not ready to play. They're true freshmen. I'd rather roll with those guys and live through the growing pains than watch these FCS level scrubs get their tails beat in and week out, because that's what's most likely going to happen. So what difference does it make? Develop the guys you work so hard to recruit in the Great Wall of Carolina and tell these FCS scrubs, hit the portal. Hit the portal. Be gone. Guys, something else that jumped out to me on Saturday night on a positive note was Xavier Legette on the outside. we had questions about, okay, he's catching a lot of preseason hype. Is he going to finally live up to it? Xavier Legette, we've done this song and dance before, and for whatever reason, it's just never really clicked. And with the injury to Juice Wells, of course, as we all know, went out the second half. The foot injury that we all knew he had, that Shane Beamer downplayed for weeks. We all knew it was a problem. Probably shouldn't have played against UNC. Went anyways, whatever. He goes out in the second half. The emergence of Xavier Legette in that ball game was certainly one of the greatest bright spots. You look at the numbers, guys, and we actually named him our Week 1 MVP for South Carolina. 9 catches for 178 yards. And the thing that was the most encouraging to me, guys, is seeing him make those contested catches, turning 50-50 balls into 70-30 balls, right? High point the football, go up over UNC's defensive backs and make things happen. If, and this is a huge if South Carolina can get any semblance of blocking at any point this season, they've got some nice weapons on the outside. You think about Juice Wells returning. That's a nice 1-2 punch with Juice Wells and Xavier Legette. After a preseason full of question marks and just questioning, is he actually going to live up to the hype? I think it's safe to say Xavier Legette has legitimately emerged as your wide receiver too. There is no debate. There is no question. That dude is a playmaker. It just looks like, and this was the hope, right? This is what we had our fingers crossed for, that it was almost like that Texas A&M kickoff return last year. The light bulb just turned on for Xavier Legette. It was like it just, something clicked. And you hear about this, guys, believe it or not, in the corporate world, and anytime you're doing anything, right, there's always, for all of us, there's this light bulb moment. For some people, it's repetition number 1. For some people, it's repetition 100, repetition 1,000. For some people, it's repetition 10,000. For some people, it never comes. But I think that light bulb moment was Texas A&M last year for Xavier Legette. It was just like, after that, this dude's confidence through the roof. And maybe that's all it took, because we've always felt like the talent was there, but something was missing. And maybe it was that Texas A&M game that now all of a sudden Xavier Legette has come into his own. And I think after seeing what we saw against UNC Saturday night, he is absolutely this team's wide receiver 2, and can serve, by the way, as a nice option at wide receiver 1 if Juice Wells is out for an extended period of time. To the defensive side we go, guys. Another big takeaway for me. Line of scrimmage is the theme from Saturday night's game. You look at what North Carolina did on the ground. 168 total rushing yards. What was more disturbing, though, was this. In the midst of a game in which North Carolina accumulated 9 sacks, South Carolina mustered up a grand total of 0. Goose egg. 0 sacks. Guys, North Carolina, they couldn't protect Drake May last year. That dude was running for his life at times. And I can think of maybe 2 to 3 scenarios in which Drake May was throwing on the run, having to get outside of the pocket. But for most of that ball game, it was 7-on-7. For most of that ball game, Drake May was taking his drop, his first read, his second read. Hell, he could have looked at his third, his fourth, his fifth, ordered a pizza, ate a sandwich. Whatever he wanted to do, he could do it. Playing 7-on-7. And you saw South Carolina pay. I don't give a damn how good your secondary is. If you can't get pressure on an opposing quarterback, and we talked about that being one of the keys to the game, guys. And this was something I did not want to say in the preseason, because what do you gain from it, right? Being, I guess, this brutally honest. And maybe the addition, the return of a Jatius Gear helps this. But I'll just never forget, guys, South Carolina, 2013, they have this great defensive line with Jadeveon Clowney and a host of others, right? And I'll never forget, it was actually the 2012 East Carolina game I was at. long time ago, right? And South Carolina put their twos in on the defensive front. And you're thinking to yourself, man, these guys are just not very good. Like, I don't know what's going on, but thank goodness we have our starters, right? Fast forward to 2014. South Carolina had not recruited. They had not done what they needed to do. We all saw that historically bad year for the defense, and the defensive front was terrible. You look at 2015, same thing, right? It just bodies that you look back at and you say, man, those guys were not SEC ball players. I like Tonka Hemingway. I like Boogie Huntley at times. I think Jordan Strawn is, you know, a capable player, right? This defensive front to me is 2014, 2015 level bad. This defensive front reminds me so much of those defensive fronts, man. Where it's like Jordan Strawn is your one guy off the edge, and everybody else is just sort of out there. Like, I'm sorry, guys, but you know what? I'm not. Because guess what? These players are getting paid NIL, boo-hoo, cry me a river if you don't like it. When you're starting a guy like Brian Thomas Jr. on the edge, a spring game star is what that dude was. He ain't an SEC level body, man. Like, that to me is screaming to me like, uh-oh. Like, we're in trouble. We're in some serious trouble. And I don't want to overreact to one game, but UNC's offensive line, guys, they weren't good last year. Have they made major strides? Maybe that'll be the case. Maybe UNC's offensive and defensive lines, they turn out to be some of the best in college football. But based off what we knew coming in, I think South Carolina's defensive front, they've got major issues, man. They've got major issues. And it reminds me of those 2014 and 2015 groups that couldn't stop anybody, that could not generate a pass rush, that didn't even look the part of SEC level football players. Until we see different, guys, we talked about it again all offseason. Edge was a problem. Edge is a problem. There's no depth at edge. There's no quality depth at edge. What are we going to do at edge? You went and picked up Jatius Gear. Outside of that, who'd you go get? Tuazama from UAB. He played a little bit. It's similar to the offensive line. I don't know where the answers come from. Maybe a guy like Desmond Umeozulu, who I don't know where he was in that game. But this defensive front, guys, I see another outside of the top 100 in rush defense and really lackluster pass rush incoming. I mean, because you're going to face O-lines that are a lot better than North Carolina's. You are. And I look at this group and I don't know. It was bad. I mean, it was just bad. It was bad, man. It was bad. And I think it's 2014-15 level bad. I think it's that bad. So while I think South Carolina's linebackers, maybe they've taken a step forward. It's really unfortunate, the injury to Mo Kaba, and probably going to be out for the year again, which is, again, it's just such a massive blow to that group and the expectations of the linebacker room. Maybe the defensive front took a step back. As we talked about in the offseason, hey, you lost Zach Pickens, you lost Jordan Birch from a group that did what it did last year. I don't think at the tackles you added anybody. On the edge, you added Gear and you added Tuazama. But, like, did you really replace the production that you lost? Game one would tell us no. Sticking with the defensive side, guys, and the big takeaway for me and a positive, speaking of the linebackers, Debo Williams, I think that kid is going to be a force this season. We talked about in the offseason the comments he made about being a smart football player and playing with instinct and knowing when an opposing offense is doing it. I think you saw that. I think Debo Williams, I don't think he's the most talented guy on the football field. I don't think he is. Nobody's saying he's Harold Perkins of South Carolina, but this dude plays like a veteran. I know many people have compared him to Shaq Wilson. He plays with that veteran presence. He plays that edge. There's going to be a lot more on his plate now that Mo Kaba, it seems, is out for the remainder of the season. Is just what it sounds like. They are saying at least going to be out for some significant time. Had that big hit, obviously, in that game, a guy who plays downhill. He loves contact. He embraces it, plays the great energy. I think Devo Williams is going to be a force for South Carolina. I think he's going to be a nice story when it's all said and done. A guy that, again, came from Delaware and over the last couple of years developed and really emerged at that position. So if you're looking for a bright spot, on that defensive side, and I'll say this too, by the way, guys, I didn't even have this in my takeaways, but the secondary and the play of the secondary, they made big plays down the stretch to keep South Carolina in this football game. I think that's something that we knew the secondary was a positive. I put the success of Drake May more on the defensive front because you give him time to throw. They've got weapons, guys. I'm not someone that comes here on this show Monday. Let me tell you about all the reasons I was right and you guys are wrong. How dare you question me? Because I get plenty of picks and predictions and things I say wrong as well, guys. But I was sort of sitting there laughing during that game on Saturday night when, people were just losing their minds over me talking about the North Carolina tight ends and how good they were. And I mean, UNC's tight ends made plays all night, right? They got weapons all over the field. And so we knew the secondary was going to be a strength, and that's going to be something. If you can generate any sort of pass rush, they're going to flourish. But Devo Williams, specifically in the middle of that defense, back to what I was saying, I think he's going to be a big-time impact guy this year, and I think he was a bright, shining spot from the performance on Saturday on the defensive side of the football. Finally, guys, my final takeaway from this ball game, Spencer Rattler. Did I save the best for last? Spencer Rattler's poise, his decision-making, I thought it was very impressive, guys, especially all things considered. He had no run game to help him. He had no pass protection. And I'll say this, and this will be an unpopular opinion amongst Gamecock Nation. And it's taken nothing away from Rattler, right? I'm not even worried about like the final stats because I think a lot of those stats, guys, UNC was playing very soft in defense. But I loved what I saw in regards to decision-making. That's what jumped out to me more than anything was the decision-making of Spencer Rattler, protecting the football. I didn't see him really put it in harm's way all that much, right? I mean, he threw a couple of jump balls that, again, very good throws. Let his receiver, Xavier Legette, go high point the football. And I think all in all, he did not put South Carolina in any positions or many positions at all to where – it was a dangerous type of position. And unfortunately, I think he's going to have to do that a lot this year. We talked about, guys, one of my greatest fears of the offense was when South Carolina gets one-dimensional, what are they going to do? And you saw exactly that. You saw exactly that play out on Saturday night. That's not going to be the last time that South Carolina can't run the football. That's not going to be the last time they can't protect Spencer Rattler. That offensive line ain't going nowhere. It's going to be them same five guys that probably trot out and try to block Furman, try to block Georgia. The list goes on and on. But I loved the efficiency from Spencer Rattler. Maybe the big play wasn't there, right? Didn't have a touchdown pass in the ball game. But I loved the overall efficiency from Rattler. I love the poise. I think Spencer Rattler has shown at this point already he's a great leader. You heard the accountability in the postgame, what have you. And he took a lot of accountability for South Carolina struggles in the red zone. Although, again, if you can't run the football, you make it that much tougher on yourself. But, I think it was a great start for Spencer Rattler in game one of Dowell Loggins' offense and to have a great season for South Carolina. Again, I'm not even worried about the yards. I'm not worried about the touchdown passes. What I loved was taking care of the football. And I thought Spencer Rattler did a great job of that, especially, again, all things considered, when you think about a game that, it was all on him to get South Carolina back in the football game. He could have started forcing the football and forcing things into coverage and trying to play hero ball. And I was happy to see he did not do that. He stayed within himself. He went through his reads. He went through his checks. He did a great job of getting outside of the pocket and making things happen when he could. And so all in all, I think a successful debut for Spencer Rattler in the 2023 season. I do have one honorable mention, guys. I just went through my 5 takeaways, or my top takeaways, if you will. I have an honorable mention here. And the honorable mention is this. I just talked Spencer Rattler. We've talked some South Carolina offense. I think it is far too early to tell on Dowell Loggins, right? What can you really take away from that? Can you really sit here and say the only thing I'll be critical of Dowell Loggins on is I hate starting a game like that with a trick play, because what that tells me, guys, is you're setting the tone for, okay, we're going to run a gimmick right out of the gate. Like, do you feel like your offense has to be gimmicky to beat a North Carolina defense that nobody was giving them credit? Nobody was giving UNC the benefit of the doubt in this one. They had some defense that had taken major steps. All I heard from Gamecock Nation was how terrible UNC's defense was and was going to be. And so you think you need a gimmick out of the gate to expose them? That I was not a huge fan of. But outside of that, guys, and it's something we talked about in the preseason. We mentioned this in the offseason. When it came to Dowell Loggins, he's the top storyline. Can Dowell Loggins, can they pick up where they left off end of last season and keep it rolling? And my prediction was this, guys. We're going to get to end of season, and I think folks are going to realize that was Dowell Loggins an upgrade in regards to play caller? Sure. Yeah, absolutely. But the bigger question mark and the bigger problem, it's not the X's and O's, man. It's the Jimmies and the Joes. There's not an offensive coordinator in college football that could have schemed around what we saw South Carolina do in the trenches. Not a single one. Not Garrett Riley, not Kendall Briles, not Steve Spurrier, not anybody could have schemed around that. And so I think it's far too early to cast any sort of judgment on Dowell Loggins at this point. We'll see how this thing shakes out. We get to midway point of the season. I think then you can really start to evaluate and kind of pick apart and say, okay, what do we like about his offense? What do we dislike? Is he doing this well, that well? You know, the only other thing I'd say is that 4th and 19 play call. Bad play call. I don't care what you say. I know our guy Austin Gregory in the Big Cock Club Discord, he thought that was some brilliant play call, and Dowell Loggins is the best OC in the world. Terrible play call. Horrific play call. Throwing 10 yards short of the sticks. Dumb. Stupid. It made no sense. You want to say kicking a field goal is waving the white flag. Well, throwing a route 10 yards short of the sticks on 4th and 19, it's waving the white flag and making yourself look like a dumbass in the process. And South Carolina, unfortunately, did that all night long. They found ways to embarrass themselves on national TV. So either way, back to the point, I think it's far too early to tell on Dowell Loggins. It's far too early to tell on his play calling, his scheme. Let's let it play out at least halfway through the season, and then we can start to pick that thing apart and determine what type of play caller Dowell Loggins is. But all in all, guys, again, Gamecocks falling to UNC 31-17. They've got to pick up the pieces and pick up the pieces quickly as Furman comes to town for the home opener at Williams-Brice. Guys, that being said, we're going to jump into a quick break. On the side, we'll keep the conversation rolling here on this Monday. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is brought to you by our friends at Carolina Cigars. Carolina Cigars has been in operation since 2008, recently taken over by the Peterson family in 2020. Whether you're new to the cigar scene or whether you've been enjoying cigars your entire life, Carolina Cigars has the expertise and knowledge to make your visit to their shop enjoyable. Stop by for a fine cigar and experience their classic cigar lounge where people come together, share conversations, and become friends. So if you're into cigars and you're on Hilton Head Island, you really do need to go by and see them. They offer same-day shipping nationwide, free delivery island-wide for weddings and all special occasions. They're also proud to offer premium cigars at 9 outside humidor locations around Hilton Head Island, and they have special events throughout the year as well. They want to talk to you. They want to engage. They want to share with you their cigar selection they're very proud of and their beautiful cigar lounge. When you're in the Low Country, there's only one place for cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, and there's only one place I get my cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, Hilton Head Island's premier cigar merchant. Come and share your passion. It's all here at Carolina Cigars. Give them a follow on Instagram at Carolina_cigars, or give them a call today at 843-681-8600. That's 843-681-8600. Smoke them if you got them, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya. The Daily Crow is also sponsored by Rhine Law Firm, LLC, principally managed by James R. Rhine Jr., located at 1350 Ashley River Road, Suite 650, Charleston, South Carolina, 29407, serving the greater Charleston area.
Muscle Dougie, ho.
All right, guys, we're back here on this Monday, September the 4th, 2023. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. I had another segment planned, guys, talking about expectations for this season, the way they might be readjusted after that loss to North Carolina. But instead, I think that's something we can save for the Q&A Power Hour. And, of course, guys, as always, it is 1:15, so we'll go ahead. We got a great conversation lined up. Our good friend Chris Doering. Unfortunately, we talked yesterday before the LSU-Florida State game because Chris had obligations with SEC Network. You probably saw him over the weekend in the studio to be in studio for that ball game. So we did not mention LSU, FSU, but either way, we dove into week one, talked about everything, guys. Sit back, relax, enjoy this conversation with our good friend Chris Doering of SEC Network. Joining us, as he does each and every single Monday, our good friend Chris Doering of SEC Network. Chris, what's going on, my man? Great to chat with you once again.
Yeah, good to chat with you and have a chance to actually chat about real games and things that happen as opposed to kind of projecting what we think. Although I don't know for your fan base and my fan base. I don't know if people want to chat about it, but we'll have to recap that nonetheless.
You got to embrace it, man. Hey, week one, the ball is rolling, and we knew, right, things can change so drastically week to week, and certainly that was the case for the Gators and the Gamecocks. Let's start with Florida, Chris. Obviously, their action took place on Thursday, falling to Utah by a final score of 24-11. Chris, I thought what was so interesting, and I'm sure you noticed it as well, as the news leaked about Cam Rising not playing in that football game, you saw the Vegas line fall and fall and fall. And at one point, Florida was a 4.5-point underdog. And many in the national media, I thought, were gravitating toward picking the Florida Gators. They became kind of that sexy upset pick. But
yeah,
Utah, obviously, the elevation and their football team as a whole, I think they showed they're a complete football team. They're not just their quarterback. And also, I thought, Chris, they showed that, I mean, they knew for weeks that Cam Rising was not going to play. They did a great job in getting their starter ready. I thought there were some encouraging signs for Florida. You know, I thought Graham Mertz, Chris, honestly, he wasn't as bad as maybe folks made him out to be in the offseason, but line of scrimmage, lack of run game, and I'm sure you'd agree, I think Florida's a team, when you can't get that two-headed monster in the backfield going, it's going to be really tough sledding. What did you see, though, specifically from the Gators season opener? And is there anything that you can take some signs of encouragement? Because it's not like Florida, you know, lost to a scrub team. They weren't expected to win. So was there anything that you saw that maybe you feel like they can take, improve on, and build off of?
Yeah, you're right, Chris. It's an interesting contrast, right? To think about Florida going out west to play an elevation against the defending two-time Pac-12 champion versus some of the teams in the SEC that were playing mid-major type programs or even FCS programs. And so I think you kind of have to take some things with a grain of salt. Would it have been better maybe to have played McNeese State in the first ball game instead of week 2? Perhaps. But I think you actually do learn a lot about your team. And let's be honest, nobody thought Florida was going to win the national championship this year. So losing a game out of conference is not as devastating as I think the Florida fan base would have you believe it is. Now, the way they went about losing it is certainly something that's frustrating and can maybe cause some concern looking forward in the future. But you talked about Utah, knowing Cam Rising was out, knowing that they were going to have to use a backup, or in this case, 2 backup quarterbacks, which I thought they did a great job of using both of those and playing to their skill sets. The play calling was fantastic. I thought the coaching on the Utah side was great. I thought the coaching on the Florida side was less than what was expected, given some of the things that I had seen in practice and things that I had heard. But I think you go back and the penalties are one thing. Jumping off sides on 3rd and short, 4th and short in an environment like that's effort. That's early season mistakes. Not knowing where to line up, not knowing that you have to have enough men on the line of scrimmage as a receiver where you are, where you're supposed to be, is an issue. Not knowing that you can't have 2 number 3s on the field at the same time when you get to stop and force a punt is an issue. Getting play calling in late into the play clock is an issue. Taking delay of games in the red zone. 1 of 13 on 3rd downs is an issue. So there's a lot of things that I think you go back and look at and feel really nervous about. But I'm with you, Graham Mertz. I thought he did a great job. I don't know that it's ideal that you throw the ball 44 times or whatever he ended up doing. But sometimes, and people don't know this unless you actually have a chance to look at the tape, but like Utah took away the run. They were putting guys in the box to try to force Florida to have to throw the football, which they kind of reluctantly did a little bit later. But I thought Graham Mertz got him into some good plays at the line of scrimmage at times, made some really good throws at times, made some that maybe could have been a little bit better. But at the end of the day, I think there's more playmakers on the offense than there were last year, particularly at the receiver position. Trey Wilson looked really good. Ricky Pearsall had a slow start, but got going later on. So there is room to maybe feel optimistic about it, but you got to clean up the self-inflicted wounds because Florida's just not good enough to win against quality teams doing that to themselves.
Chris, certainly not asking you to go scorched earth on Billy Napier or anything, but does it concern you when you have those type of mistakes? Again, I know it's a season opener, but these are things that, this isn't year one. And some of those things I feel like you're talking about, they are year one mistakes showing up in year 2.
Yeah, it's not year one, but there are 40-something new players on the roster. So in effect, it's year one that those guys are being coached by this coaching staff. It's year one that those guys are all playing together as a unit. So I don't mean to make mistakes for or make excuses for them, but at the same time, I go back and look at last year, LSU was miserable a year ago tonight in that opener against Florida State. It looked like they had problems even getting lined up and catching punts and executing plays. And they ended up getting a lot better. I didn't even think they were going to get bowl eligible after the loss last year. So there is a precedent for feeling like you can improve. I certainly am not putting Billy Napier on the same level of coaching as I am with Brian Kelly right now. But I still do believe in Billy Napier. I think he's a good coach. I think he's surrounded by a lot of other good ones. Go back defensively. Chris, you and I talked last week. Austin Armstrong, I still believe, is the star in the making. Did they get beat on the first play? Safety, the Moton gets caught up in the crosser. They hit the post over the top. They give up a 70-yard touchdown there. Not great. The offense turns the ball over early in the third quarter inside the 20. They pick it off and set up a short field to be able to score. They get off the field on third down. They punt. They have 2 number 3s on the field and get the defense right back on the field. So I think the defense is actually maybe one of the things that you should be most optimistic about if you're a Florida fan.
Now, moving to, Chris, the game Saturday night in Charlotte, Gamecocks falling to North Carolina 31-17. And to call this one disappointing, I think is putting it lightly. A game in which, Chris, I thought this was a coin flip game. I think some within Gamecock Nation maybe took the Tar Heels a little bit lightly and took lightly the ability of Drake May, his array of weapons, even without Tez Walker and some others. And then defensively, we were not sure the type of strides UNC would make, but it couldn't be worse than last year.
Yeah.
But to say what happened on Saturday night was a surprise, again, I think that's putting it lightly. 9 sacks in the ball game. South Carolina rushed for 11 yards. We'll start offensively. Your thoughts on the Gamecocks' offensive line struggles, Chris, because it's one of those things where following this program as closely as we do, you knew this was a question mark. You knew it could be a deficiency, and you tried to plug your holes with transfers from schools such as Western Illinois, Charlotte, Mercer, Yale. And Chris, frankly, I think you saw the difference in Power 5 talent, ACC talent versus maybe some of those lower level guys that I don't think they really knew what they were stepping into. Your thoughts on the offense, because I think that was the big question mark coming in the season after you fire your offensive coordinator, Marcus Satterfield, all the Spencer Rattler chatter. But, I mean, he never had a chance, and Dowell Loggins never had a chance. If you can't get some sort of push or provide any protection, you give up 9 sacks and rush for 11 yards, Chris. I mean, you're going to lose that game 10 times out of 10.
You know what it reminds me of a little bit, Chris, is last year we had such high hopes for Kentucky with Will Levis returning, with Chris Rodriguez at the running back position, with some receivers that ended up surprising us as freshmen. But all of that was a moot point because they couldn't protect. They couldn't run block and they couldn't protect. And certainly every defensive coordinator's main goal when you talk to them about what you hope to do is to stop the run. When you stop the run and make somebody run one-dimensional, it's easy from there. And I know Gene Chizik very well. I know early on he knew that they weren't going to be able to run the football against him. And at that point in time, it became much easier for him to call plays. Now, credit to North Carolina. They upgraded their talent significantly on the defensive line and the entire side of the ball. It looked like a total mismatch in terms of the skill and level of ability that they had on their defensive line versus what South Carolina had on their offensive line. But it became almost a feeding frenzy where things got out of control. What was it? 7 of the 9 sacks, I think, were in the second half. Playing from behind is obviously not great. Not being able to run the ball hurts you as well. But I don't know, Chris. I don't know what you can do to fix it. I mean, it was disappointing to have as many injuries impact your availability of top players as there was. But if you can't find a way to block, it doesn't matter how good your skill players are. I was disappointed to see Juice Wells go out. Xavier Legette maybe was the real bright spot of the night, making multiple contested catches. So his sense of urgency seems to have come along. But even on the passes that Spencer Rattler completed, he was still getting hit time and time again. So I know he's hurting on Sunday morning, and I can't even imagine what he must be thinking about going forward. The problem becomes remember last year when they weren't playing well, as soon as he didn't know what to do, he's scrambling away. The games that he was the most successful, Tennessee, Clemson, he stood in the pocket, made a quick decision through the football. When you don't know if you're going to be protected, your natural human instinct is to try to run and make something happen, start seeing ghosts that aren't even there. And that's my concern going forward. If they can't make him feel more confident in there, the entire plan of the season offensively erodes.
And to your point, Chris, again, when you follow it as closely as we do, sort of the lay of the land, what the roster looks like. I mean, when you look at this roster, Chris, and what's available, it's not like you've got a bunch of second teamers that are juniors and seniors, and you say, okay, well, maybe these guys are ready to play their best ball. I mean, they're true freshmen. And granted, they were highly rated, but that's not normally a recipe for success in the SEC when, oh, by the way, in 2 weeks, your first SEC games is between the hedges at Georgia. And you're going to ask those young guys to go block those monsters over there at UGA. Chris, I think on the defensive side, though, I think South Carolina has issues there as well. I think their secondary is fantastic. But that defensive front, you mentioned Spencer Rattler, the scrambling, getting hit. Bro, Drake May was playing 7-on-7. I mean, setting his feet comfortable. And we talked about coming in that game, they had to disrupt his rhythm, his timing, his comfortability. I can only think of maybe 2 or 3 times tops that I saw Drake May scrambling. And I mean, he's a guy that's going to make you pay. So fans get so exhausted hearing it. But line of scrimmage on that side of the ball, Chris, I think that's a major issue as well.
Yeah, I mean, and it's really what the SEC is about. We talk about it probably too much, but it is a line of scrimmage league, and it certainly is true. And again, you're not able to go out into the free agent market and bring anybody in. So it kind of is what it is at this point. Florida's had the same problem the last couple of years, and it's manifested itself in terms of passing yards given up in the secondary, inability to get off the field on third down. If you can't pressure with your front four, if you can't disrupt the run game by penetrating with your defensive line, again, it's going to be a long season. So I was proud of the fight. I thought that the secondary made a couple plays to keep them in the ball game when it looked like it was about to get out of hand. I thought North Carolina made some better adjustments than I saw South Carolina making adjustments. But at the end of the day, you got to find a way to create some pressure. So if you can't do it organically with your front four, now it starts to be something where you're going to have to maybe ask that secondary to do more than you'd like to, unfortunately.
Chris, two-part question for you, then we'll move on to the rest of the slate. How surprised were you in just how much of a beatdown that was? Because, again, I thought it was a 50-50 game. I did not see it playing out the way that it did. Did that surprise you at all? And then, if you came in this season with unrealistic expectations, and I say unrealistic, expecting 9-3, 10-2, something crazy like that, to be fair, I'd call that unrealistic. If you came in with unrealistic expectations, this more so applies to that crowd. But my second part of the question is, how do you feel that loss to North Carolina? And I'm not trying to overreact, but how do you feel? Does it reset expectations in your mind? Because I had South Carolina at 7-5 with a win over the Tar Heels. And so now all of a sudden, I think that this season goes from, hey, let's match last year's win total to, you better make sure you find a way to get to 6 wins because with offensive line play and lack of pressure, and there are no gimmies on this slate. There already weren't, but even more so now.
Yeah, I think there's one thing to lose, and there's another thing in the style and the way you go about losing. And I think the way that South Carolina went about losing that ball game gives you real reason for concern. As you talked about before, the offensive line, the defensive line, if you can't block them, you can't protect, you can't run the football a little bit, you can't create some pass rush, it's going to create some real problems for you, especially as you get into SEC play. So, I think there are a lot of Florida fans right now reevaluating what they think the year can be like based upon the way that Florida lost the game. So, I thought it was going to be hard for them. I was nervous, after Coach Beamer's first year when they end up, getting bowl eligible, winning the Duke's Mayo Bowl and win 7 games that year, that they were going to have a hard time exceeding that expectation or even living up to it. And they did exceed it. Now the bar is set higher. You got younger players. You got some issues with injuries at the start of the season. That's never a good thing. So I do think, there needs to be some patience and understanding that this program's still being built and that it's going to have some bumps along. It's not growth is not an upward trajectory all the time. There are some bumps in the road. There are some back steps and some dips, but I believe in Shane Beamer. I believe in his coaching staff, and hopefully they can find a way to rally. Because again, last year, after that Florida game, maybe the most embarrassing loss of the year, when they go down to Gainesville and don't score a single offensive point, they come back and find a way to rally and beat Tennessee and Clemson in back-to-back weeks. So if anybody can do it, I believe in Coach Beamer.
Chris, the rest of the SEC slate, it really was cupcake weekend. I mean, the closest margin of victory was 25 points. That was Missouri on Thursday, 35-10. I want to go directly to Tuscaloosa, though, a 56-7 win, but you look at the storylines underneath the storylines. The play of Jalen Milroe, what did you see from him? I mean, I only saw highlights of this game, obviously, but when Four is on the field, I mean, he's one of the best athletes, if not the best athlete. And I thought the touch on the deep ball, I thought that really stood out to me on a couple of those that he hit. Did anything jump out to you? Obviously, the real test will come this weekend against Texas, but what did you see from Jalen Milroe in that Alabama quarterback room on Saturday night?
Yeah, I've talked to you a couple times in the offseason about my concerns for Alabama as a whole. You know, I thought they would go 9-3 this year, and largely that had to do with a couple different things. Quarterback position, who we didn't necessarily know was going to win that job and what the capabilities would be of that person. Offensive line, who's been underachieving the last couple of years, and receivers that really haven't developed all that well in the last season or two as well. So I think in going back and watching that game last night, the offensive line did a good job of protecting for the most part. Coach Saban was a little frustrated with some pressures that they gave up, 2 sacks as well. But all in all, I thought they were pretty good. The receivers made plays down the field, something more explosive plays than we had seen before. But the story of the night was Jalen Milroe. And I thought he was the right guy to start this year, given some of the concerns that I had. But I had no idea he was going to play with the poise that he played with the confidence that he played with. Even on the touchdown where the bad snap is rolling back by him, a lot of guys freak out. They dive on the ball. They try to pick it up and make a play. This dude, calmly goes back there, gets it, gets himself collected, and runs the ball into the end zone. He's a great athlete, as you said, but the question was, is he going to be a great quarterback? And I saw some things last night that lead me to believe that he certainly can be. The touch, as you mentioned, on the deep ball, the decision-making, I really felt a lot different about Jalen Milroe and about this team as a whole after watching it last night. Now, albeit it's not LSU or Tennessee or some of the other SEC teams they'll play, but it's better competition than a lot of the FCS opponents that SEC teams played. So I think it's a great opener for them. It's exactly what they needed to get ready for Texas coming into town this week.
Chris, we'll go to another brand new quarterback situation. You look at Georgia's schedule. You could not have asked for a better opening to break in Carson Beck with the game against UT Martin on Saturday. And then, of course, you got Ball State in week 2. But that game got off to somewhat of a slow start, right? I was getting texts about, are you looking at Georgia right now? Maybe they've fallen off to some degree or whatever. All they do is go finish the game, win 48-7. More importantly, though, what did you see from Carson Beck, from the Georgia offense? Again, the game did have sort of a sluggish feel early, but the Dogs obviously rolled. Did you take anything away from that ball game and Carson Beck's play specifically?
Yeah, here's the thing. I don't know how much you can take away playing an FCS opponent. I remember myself playing against some of those type games where, even the most competitive person has a hard time really getting that emotional readiness up and ready to go. So it was the perfect game, as you said, for where they are right now, having to replace Stetson Bennett. Carson Beck gets a chance to get his feet wet against an opponent you knew they were going to beat regardless of what happened. I thought Brock Bowers was maybe one of the few people early on that was playing as hard as they needed. Kirby was a little frustrated with the guys' sense of urgency, but they ended up turning it on. And you did it without, Ladd McConkey's not out there. So Mekhi Muse steps up and makes a big play. Ra Thomas comes over from Mississippi State, makes a big play down the field. They end up having, I think, like 8 explosive passing plays. So once Carson Beck got going, I think he felt more comfortable, just like everybody that's a first-time starter would feel. And I think it was a good launching off point for the rest of the season. You identified some new playmakers. You understand that if you don't play your best, you're not just going to roll the ball out there and score 100 points. So I do think it was something that they needed, and I think they'll learn a lot from game 1 to game 2.
Chris, sticking with quarterbacks, I feel like we're on a roll. We'll go to Nashville. Tennessee takes down Virginia 49-13. I thought really, truly, we're talking quarterbacks, but the takeaway for me was Tennessee's defense. They were swarming all over the place, but of course, everybody wants to talk about Joe Milton. What were your thoughts on him? I thought you saw some encouraging signs, but I think you still kind of see, is he going to be able to throw the changeup, right, and throw balls in a window? And because, like you mentioned, as the competition increases, it's going to become that much tougher. What did you see out of Tennessee as a whole, and specifically with Milton? Do you feel like there are encouraging signs there? You need to see more? Like, what's your overall feeling right now on Tennessee's QB1?
Yeah, I think it's important to note, the problems that we talked about with South Carolina offensive defensive line is not a problem that Tennessee looks like they have. They controlled the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball yesterday. And I also think it's important to talk about what Tennessee is. Tennessee, you think about them throwing the ball down the field and all these explosive pass plays. They're a team that wants to run the ball. And they started out the game, five of their first 6 plays were run plays that help move the football, help get into the tempo that they like to use, help take some of the pressure off of Joe Milton. Joe Milton needs to understand, I don't have to win the game. I got a lot of talent around me that can help me do that. The first drive was about as good as you possibly could have scripted it to be. And then I thought they got into throwing the ball a little bit too much on first down. Obviously, Ramel Keaton drops a huge pass play that was an easy walk-in touchdown. I think that kind of threw off the rhythm of the offense a little bit. But then you started seeing Joe Milton one-hop some balls and get a little errant with some of the throws. And then after 4 straight possessions of not scoring points, they got back to running it. You run on first down to help get the tempo going. When you throw an incompletion on first down, you can't get into the tempo. It's like, shooting a free throw in basketball. You got to make that free throw to get the press set up. Well, if you don't make that free throw, then you're dropping back into, your normal zone or playing man defense or whatever. And so for Tennessee's offense, when they're throwing incomplete passes on first down, you're behind the chains and they can't get the tempo going. So they started running it. They started making some easy access throws. I think that helped the confidence level of Joe Milton. And then the offense got back on track again. But this is a team that ran the ball 52 times on Saturday. Joe Milton brings a little more physicality to the run game than what Hendon Hooker had. He ended up having 2 touchdowns himself. So I'm encouraged about what I saw from Tennessee. They were another team that I felt like Alabama, those 2 teams may take a step back this year. But week 1 has me feeling a lot better about both those teams than maybe I had predicted.
Yeah, Chris, as you mentioned, the physicality of Joe Milton really stood out to me as well. The one stiff arm he had, bulldozing guys, getting in the end zone, that really jumped off the page. The rest of the slate, Chris, did anything jump out to you? I mean, like you mentioned, it's really tough to take anything away when you're playing teams like Ball State and Western Carolina and Mercer and what have you. But what of all the other games, was there anything specifically that maybe it caught your eye and you're really curious now moving forward to pay attention to?
Yeah, I thought quarterback play as a whole was really good in the conference throughout the entire weekend. I was encouraged by that, especially since we had, some new starters and guys in new places that were taking over. I also was very encouraged by a lot of the receiver play that I saw in the conference this weekend. Texas A&M maybe being the one that stood out the most. The combination of Connor Wegman's improvement and that group of wide receivers, we talked an awful lot about them in the offseason. Anaya Smith coming back from the injury, Evan Stewart and his capabilities, Muschamp Muhammad. But we'd heard a lot about Noah Thomas. Noah Thomas caught 2 touchdowns last year. He caught 3 in the game on Saturday, 6'6", long, athletic guy. He's a real weapon. So I told you when we talked last week that I was feeling better about Texas A&M than I had the last 2 seasons. I feel even better about them after watching them. I know they were playing an opponent that was outmatched, but just the execution. We've seen Texas A&M slop it around against FCS type opponents before. That was certainly not the case in the game they played on Saturday night.
Now, Chris, of course, obviously we sit here Sunday afternoon. So for those wondering, we're going to skip over the LSU and Florida State game because that has not happened. Before we get you out of here, Chris, and again, thank you so much for taking your time as always here this Monday. We look at the week 2 slate now, and there are really 3 games that catch our eye that are the headliners. Ole Miss and Tulane, which I think is a really, really sneaky good game. Pair of top 25 teams. Texas A&M, like you mentioned, going on the road to Miami. Bit of a test, right? Take care of your business, what have you. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. And then, of course, Chris, the one we're all looking forward to, Alabama and Texas. And if you want to focus on that one, I cannot wait to see, like we mentioned, that's going to be the real test for the quarterback position for Jalen Milroe. If they pass that, and Alabama, of course, the home team, if they get that win and the quarterback play as well, I think the outlook of the SEC might change a little bit because That's really been the only question for the Crimson Tide. It's not about roster. It's just that position.
Yeah.
Of course, Quinn Ewers in Texas, the future SEC members will come in. It's going to be a great matchup. But your thoughts on the Week 2 slate in the SEC?
It gets better. I thought the Week 1 slate was not great. I think we're getting cheated a little bit with some of the games that we were subjected to, not only in this conference but across the country. But I am very excited about watching Alabama and Texas square off. It was a great game last year. I think if Quinn Ewers doesn't get hurt in that game, Texas probably wins the football game. Bryce Young single-handedly found a way to bring Alabama back, and there's no Bryce Young on the field this year. So I think that's a little concerning. But Jalen Milroe and his ability to not just be an athlete, but a quarterback does make me feel a little bit better about it. I didn't get a chance to watch the Texas game yet. I'll go back and check that out on tape. But I have a lot of respect for Quinn Ewers and certainly even more respect for Steve Sarkisian. I thought he did a great job when he was at Alabama. I know he's the right guy to help bring Texas back. And as much as we either love or hate Texas, college football is better when Texas is good. College football is better when Miami's good. College football here in the SEC is better when Tennessee and Florida are good. So, I hope that the game lives up to the hype. I certainly hope the game on Sunday night that we're about to watch here with LSU and FSU lives up to the hype. But early in the season, it's still one of those things where you haven't quite maybe figured out who you are. There's going to be some inevitable mistakes, but I just hope that those teams are able to play cleanly. Based upon what I saw on Saturday night, I feel a lot better about Alabama's chances to win that football game. So I haven't watched a ton of it yet on tape, but my early inclination is that Alabama finds a way to get the dub.
Chris Doering of SEC Network does a fantastic job as always. Chris, keep up the great work, man. Caught you in studio over the weekend. You guys crush it each and every single weekend of the SEC football season. Enjoy LSU, FSU, and we'll talk to you next week, my friend.
I appreciate it, man. Heading in for night 4 in a row here of college football over this Labor Day weekend, man. So it should be fun.
Okay, that was our good friend Chris Doering of SEC Network. Of course, guys, he joins TDC every single Monday, and I appreciate his thoughts, his commentary, his breakdown, his analysis of everything. Y'all be sure, check out Chris Doering on SEC Network. Those guys, they do a fantastic job. That being said, guys, we are going to jump into a quick break, and we'll dive into the Q&A Power Hour. In hour number 3, I want to hear from you, all of your questions, your comments, your calls, and more here on this Therapy Monday. You're tuned in to the Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is brought to you by our friends at Carolina Cigars. Carolina Cigars has been in operation since 2008, recently taken over by the Peterson family in 2020. Whether you're new to the cigar scene or whether you've been enjoying cigars your entire life, Carolina Cigars has the expertise and knowledge to make your visit to their shop enjoyable. Stop by for a fine cigar and experience their classic cigar lounge, where people come together, share conversations, and become friends. So if you're into cigars and you're on Hilton Head Island, you really do need to go by and see them. They offer same-day shipping nationwide, free delivery island-wide for weddings and all special occasions. They're also proud to offer premium cigars at 9 outside humidor locations around Hilton Head Island, and they have special events throughout the year as well. They want to talk to you. They want to engage. They want to share with you their cigar selection they're very proud of and their beautiful cigar lounge. When you're in the Low Country, there's only one place for cigars. That's Carolina Cigars. And there's only one place I get my cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, Hilton Head Island's premier cigar merchant. Come and share your passion. It's all here at Carolina Cigars. Give them a follow on Instagram at Carolina_cigars. Or give them a call today at 843-681-8600. That's 843-681-8600. Smoke them if you got them, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya. The Daily Crow is also sponsored by Rhine Law Firm, LLC, principally managed by James R. Rhine Jr., located at 1350 Ashley River Road, Suite 650, Charleston, South Carolina, 29407, serving the greater Charleston area.
Muscle Dougie, ho.
All right, guys, we're back here on this Monday, September the 4th, 2023. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. That being said, we have begun our Q&A Power Hour, taking your questions, comments, calls as well at 843-790-3377. That's 843-790-3377 here on this Monday. Guys, you're spending your Labor Day with us. Thank you all so much for doing so. That being said, let's jump to the phone lines.
Call from Spur Your Enthusiasm.
Spur Your Enthusiasm. Bryce, what's up, man? How you doing?
All right, guys, let's go ahead and start the hour of Monday therapy session. Good God. So I just want to say this to the fan base. Guys, I've been seeing a lot of slapdickery going around with people talking about Beamer and the job he did. Guys, it's game one. It is week one. 9 sacks. Yes, that is plenty of reason for concern. But, guys, pump the brakes, okay? Maybe there's some way we can find some way to salvage this season. I mean, obviously something schematically was not working on the offensive line. We can still salvage this season and have something to hang our hats on and be confident about where we're going forward. It is not over. We are not going to – we're making a bowl game. We can do possibly better than that. You know, we remember this time last year, Chris, we sat there, we watched that beat down against Florida, and we thought all was lost. And, I mean, we still found a way to salvage the season and do something. I mean, Beamer ball's about not giving up. Beamer ball's about fucking win anyways. When everything's against you, you find a way. And Gamecock Nation just needs to chill out and let the process play out. They will find a way. And I want to leave it at that. And, you know, I'll just go from there, you know.
Bryce, very well said, my friend. And a message we all need and needed on this Monday. I appreciate you.
Go Cox.
Go Cox, man. Appreciate it. Great stuff from Bryce. And listen, he's right. He's right. I think we all had a very similar feeling after last year's Florida game that there was no hope and that South Carolina, their season was done. And what the Gamecocks did in the following 2 weeks was some of the most improbable play like we had ever seen, right? None of us ever expected that. I think the only difference is this. The fact it's a season opener and you spend all off season long being hype and getting pumped, and for it to culminate with that, just a tough pill to swallow, man. Let's jump to the phone lines here.
Call from
Dalton.
Dalton, what's up, man? How are you?
How's it going, man? I'm just enjoying my day off today.
Nice.
So, you know, just hanging out, not doing much anything.
Very good. I'm doing well, Dalton. I'd be doing better though if I took your Nebraska +7 pick. We went 3-3 on the gambling picks this weekend, and we started off with that loss, Minnesota with the cover. So I guess I should have taken your picks this past weekend, my man.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it was a tough way to lose for the Huskers, but you know, they covered the spread, so that's really all you can ask for, you know.
Indeed.
But yeah, I mean, I just wanted to call in, and first of all, I wanted to say that you were right about the offensive line. It's obvious from week one that this unit was incredibly inexperienced and needed more time to develop, you know, needed better personnel, obviously. I think, you know, we probably wouldn't have gotten exposed so bad if we had played lesser competition and got a tune-up game, but, you know, you kind of know what the schedule is going into it, and, you know, they were unprepared to deal with what they went out there and dealt with. So, you know, that being said, it's obvious that the offensive line is going to be an issue, going forward this season. But we've also seen Shane Beamer develop the team and get better as you go out throughout the season. So, that's kind of where I'm at with the O-line. The defensive line also looked kind of bad, was unable to stop the run again against, a pretty bad rushing team, at least from last year in North Carolina. That can get better. I have more faith in the personnel we have on the defensive front than we do on the offensive front at this point. But, I do think it is fair to put some of the blame on Clayton White, because for the last 3 years, we've ranked outside the top 100 in rushing defense, and playing in this league, you just can't do that and win a whole lot of games. Every team has, big offensive linemen, or at least, teams that are good in the SEC have big offensive linemen, and they have a good running game. And if you can't stop the run, you're not going to be very good on defense. So, depending on how this season goes, it might not be, unfair to question Clayton White and his status as the defensive coordinator moving forward.
And Dalton, to start with that point, the Clayton White thing, I would agree with you. I think we were very candid and open and honest with those conversations in the preseason, just talking about this is a huge year for Clayton White. And, we know the secondary is a strength, right? We all expected that. You hope and pray and keep your fingers crossed that Nick Evenwari won't be dealing with something all that serious, because I think you saw the second he went out, right? There's depth issues at the safety position. Like, I all due respect, BJ Gibson, it's a reason he's not in the starting lineup. There's some other guys out there that Keenan Nelson Jr., he had a rough night. So you hope he comes back quickly. But the secondary is the strength, right? For sure. Yeah, no, he is. Yeah, Keenan Nelson, he's a redshirt freshman. But the secondary is the strength. But to your point, it's like the same old, time and time again. And if you can't stop the run, and if you can't pressure the quarterback, you're not going to have a chance to win many ball games. And I think Gamecock fans are kind of fed up, with seeing the same thing over and over and over and over again. So I'd agree with you, man. I'd agree with you. If South Carolina finishes outside of the top 100 in rush defense, again, I would not. I'll just put it to you this way. Am I going to be leading the charge of calling for Clayton White to be gone? I don't think that I will be, but I wouldn't be opposed to doing something different. I wouldn't. Which brings me back to go ahead.
To be fair to Clayton White, I do think, you look at his what he kind of does throughout a course of the game, and the defense does get a lot better in the second half. But when you give up, damn near 20 points in the first half, coming out and doing well in the second half isn't necessarily going to be enough to win all the time. You want to come out there and have a good start immediately on defense. And we just haven't seen that a whole lot, other than a couple of times where, they have been opportunistic and generated turnovers very early on in a ball game. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought too, what you saw, Dalton, was, those turnovers late were great, but I thought what you saw too Saturday, man, was like South Carolina, and I say they didn't make the big play special teams. That onside kick to start the second half was awesome, but it didn't feel like the Gamecocks got those game-changing, game-breaking type of defensive plays or turnovers or special team stuff that we've seen in the past. And like we talked about it all summer, right? Like if South Carolina's forced to beat you in conventional ways, like if an opponent forces Carolina to do that, can they still win? And at baseline, just Carolina wasn't good enough. Flat out, really, in any facet. Line of scrimmage being the most obvious one, offensively and defensively. So, but to your point, man, it's one of those kind of scary things. And again, I know you got 2 turnovers, don't get me wrong, but it's like if they're not producing turnovers, like this defense, I feel like has cheated death the last 2 years because of their ability to force these big turnovers and make some adjustments, which give credit to coaching, give credit to players, what have you. But like, if you run into a game where those big turnovers aren't coming for some reason, can you still be a good defense? And I think that's something that definitely gives you some concern moving forward.
Yeah, and then as far as the positives, I thought Spencer Rattler looked really good. Obviously, his QBR rating would not, indicate that, but I honestly thought that Spencer Rattler, in a much, much worse situation, basically outplayed Drake May. And so I think, if you actually watch the game, the whole hype behind Drake May, like, he is a good quarterback. But I thought Spencer Rattler, every throw he was making was under duress. And, he was putting balls right on the receivers. And Xavier Legette was going up and getting them. He didn't have as many touchdowns just because, we got those turnovers, get in the red zone, and then we just shoot ourselves in the foot with penalties. He probably would have been able to tie the game up if the offensive line play was better. But, I think our quarterback situation is very good. And I think, if he continues to play this way, even with a very questionable offensive line, he's going to put himself into a, top 3 draft pick type situation, or top, 3 rounds in the NFL draft, type of situation this offseason.
Yeah, Dalton, I mean, all things considered, Spencer Rattler played a magnificent game. And like I mentioned earlier, the thing that I took away more so was under that duress and pressure, he didn't turn the football over. That's what I'm more encouraged about than anything. I mean, the yards were cool and the completion percentage, but like the fact that the decision-making, the poise, the, not panicking, if you will, and not feeling like he had to play hero ball and put the ball in bad positions. Like, I was really encouraged by that, because that's the number one thing that I want to see Spencer Rattler improve on this year, is just not turning the football over, because I think he's got the ability. You know what I mean? Like, it's never a question of ability. It's just, can he avoid some of those mistakes that he's run into over the last couple of years? And I thought Saturday was a really, really good sign of that. Especially like you mentioned, I mean, just under duress, it felt like every play. And I mean, dude, I can count on one hand how many times Spencer Rattler set his feet, read the defense, and made a throw. Like, he was literally on the run every play. And I think, on a side note, one of the things, and you just heard Chris Doering talk about it, one of the things that kind of worries me is you hope what doesn't happen is all of a sudden Spencer Rattler, he gets some happy feet back there, because he doesn't trust his offensive line, and he's expecting pressure and expecting to get hit. And like, you can't blame him for that, but that's something that could really disrupt your timing and affect your offense as well. So, I mean, again, like you mentioned, to the UNC game specifically, all things considered, he played a pretty beautiful game, in my opinion.
Yeah, and then the running back situation, you talked about it this offseason. Dak Joyner, I mean, he did the best he could, but I don't know that you can tell, how good he is as a true running back, in the SEC with an offensive line like that. But I would agree that, we need better personnel at the running back position. And, I don't know what's been going wrong with our recruiting, but we need to step it up big time. And, hopefully we can get some guys in the portal, because, when you don't have a running game and it's a one-dimensional offense, you can make some plays, but you're not going to have, a bunch of consistent success doing that. So,
well, and it's like you mentioned, it's like you mentioned too, Dalton, like, you can make some plays and stack up some yards. And I mean, you look at the Florida game and you look at the South Carolina game, and I thought they were actually very similar. And like, I'm taking nothing away from Rattler because we just sat here praising him, but it kind of goes to show you that passing yards don't really, that statistic, it doesn't really mean a whole lot, because I mean, anybody can go up and down the field between the 20s, right? But if you can't, when you get in the red zone, right, punch it in and convert, and typically to do that, you need a good running game. Like, that's when the field shrinks, you buckle down, you're running the football. Like, you know what I'm saying? So like, the passing yard statistic, I'm just saying, can be a little bit misleading, right? It can be a little bit misleading. And to your point, like the DeCarrion Joyner thing, I like DeCarrion Joyner. I think he's a great athlete. I go this direction with it. I think it's absolutely unfair that DeCarrion Joyner is being asked to do what he's being asked to do. To put this team's running game on his shoulders when the guy has never played running back before. Like, all things considered, like, he didn't look out of place back there. You know what I mean? Like, he looked like a running back. Would Carolina have fared better if Marshawn Lloyd was in the backfield? Like, I'm not confident in saying that. I don't know if there's a running back in America that could have got something going behind that offensive line. You know what I mean? I just don't think it's – so I think it's way too early to tell about DeCarrion Joyner's abilities running the football. Like, I think he's a great athlete. But, you know, to your point, it's not an ideal position that you're in that you've had to ask DeCarrion Joyner to fill in. And it's just what we've seen. And this is no way, like, I disagree adamantly with the people that are, like, really coming at Shane Beamer, questioning his status as head coach. I think we can all agree. But I can't believe what has transpired. I think it's inexcusable to allow the types of holes that exist on the offensive line and the running back. Like, no SEC team should ever be in this position. No SEC team should ever have to ask someone who has played quarterback and then receiver for 3 years to be their RB1. Like, that to me should just never happen. So I think it's fair to question, like, the roster management. I think it's fair to question the recruiting. I think it's fair to question the operations in the portal. Fair to question, you know, where you sit right now with the roster. I do. So, anyways, to your point, I know I just kind of rambled there, but yeah.
My next question is, like, you know, I know we saw a little bit of Juju McDowell, but, you know, Mario Anderson, what's the point of bringing him in as sort of a veteran, you know, football player? I know it was at the D2 level, you know, if you're not going to give him any snaps, because, you know, not saying you would have had more success than Dak Joyner did, but I just feel like, you know, the only way to get success in the running back room is obviously to, you know, be able to actually run block, which is the biggest issue. And then second, rotate the backs that you have out depending on the situation. And it just didn't really feel like they did that. They just, you know, put Dak Joyner in to get a majority of the snaps, and, you know, he was struggling.
Yeah, I mean, I think Dalton, you can expect to see more running backs on Saturday against Furman. You know, I think I don't know, man. I think they must have went in the North Carolina game and felt like, you know what, this isn't really the time to experiment and play all four running backs. And so, you know, I think they decided to go, you know, 1-2 punch of Joyner and Juju. But I thought we may see some other guys, but that was not the case. So I think we will see more of that this weekend. But you know, listen, when it's not working, man, and you're not exhausting all options, I understand the frustration.
And I mean, you know, the last thing I'd like to end with is you know, we have a full week of practice. I fully expect for, you know, the coaching staff to reevaluate the you know, the offensive line and maybe, you know, experiment this Saturday against Furman. There are a lot of people saying, oh, you know, we played so bad, you better watch out for Furman. They may beat us. Like, I'm sorry, I just don't see any way in which, you know, we lose to an FCS team at home. The scoreline may not be as good as what some people want it to be, just because, you know, this is a tune-up game. We're trying to see what we have, you know, with live bullets on the field. But I'm sorry, I just don't see us losing this game outright. And I mean, as far as the people complaining about Shane Beamer's presser and the viral comments about the chain gang and the clock and all that kind of stuff. I just think it's unfair to say that Shane Beamer is going to be unable to have long-term success because he blames everything on everybody else. I mean, he started out the press conference by saying it was the coaching staff's fault. We had to coach better. We had to play better. It was a lack of execution. Nothing after a performance like that the coach is going to say is going to make people feel any better. So, that whole thing, the flat dickery on Twitter, where, people just are finding clips and sound bites to shit on Shane Beamer, I just think is dumb and unfair.
And to your point, Dalton, that clip that you were referring to, that tweet at least, 450,000 views on the Bird app, or on X, excuse me. So people are taking their shots, which is what you can expect after a 31-17 loss to UNC. Dalton, I appreciate the call as always, man. Great stuff. Great to hear from you.
All right. You have a good one.
Yeah, man. Take care. Great stuff from our friend Dalton. I know Dalton went a little bit long there, but it's always good conversation with Dalton, no doubt. Guys, 843-790-3377. We'll keep the convo rolling here on this Monday. Taking your questions, comments, calls. Guys, do not forget the TSUS postgame call-in show presented to you by our friends over at A1 Air Quality Services will take place after this weekend's Furman game as well. After every single Gamecocks game, we'll go live. I can't promise they'll all be an hour and a half like that one on Saturday night was, but when you have the type of result that South Carolina had, I think that tends to happen, man. The phone lines were ringing like crazy. So let's jump to the phone lines here.
Call from.
Right.
What's going on, man? How are you?
What's going on, Chris?
Not much, just hanging out. What's up?
So I got a question about next week's game against Furman.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't play Umio Zulu or any of the younger guys. A lot of our guys this week got banged up. Do we rest those guys? Do we start the true freshmen to see what they can do? Do you not want to burn their red shirts, I guess you'd say? But, I mean, I know they have games they can play to use. So what do we do?
So I think, the main ones are Nick Eamon-Warry and Juice Wells. I think you sit both of them. Listen, if they're 110%, fine, but it feels like one of those things where that's probably not going to be the case, right? Juice Wells dealing with a foot injury that he's had all preseason long. And then Nick Eamon-Warry, anytime you're dealing with a hamstring, you want to be really careful of that, right?
Yeah.
So I would say both those guys will not play, probably should not play. I think if anybody's questionable, they should not play. To your point, man, I think this is truly where you kind of empty the bench and see what you got. I think on the offensive line, I mentioned this earlier, and I didn't mince words about it, and I'm not going to this time either. Shane Beamer, they've had a reputation of bringing in these lower-level guys and developing them and getting the most out of them. I feel like the offensive line's probably the area that this is the worst idea to do that at. Like, it's like there's such a difference between lower level, this level of playing in the trenches. You got Marquis Anderson, you got Trovon Bowe, you got Big Tree Babalade. Like, I think this is when you kind of throw them out there and just see what you have. You know what I mean? Like, I see what you have. I think same way defensive line as well. Like, I would play a lot of young guys. You would like to think you're going to beat Furman no matter what. At minimum, the second half should be full of those young guys to see what you have, to get their feet wet. Because, dude, Shane Beamer told us in the preseason, right? He's like, we're going to be depending on freshmen at every single position. We're a young football team. We have a lot of freshmen. Like, they might have to play more freshmen than even he was planning on doing so because of the struggle. So I would expect to see that. That's what I would do. Will they do that? We'll see. There's the flip side, though, of like, maybe you should play that same starting five on the offensive line and just, hope that this is a game that's a confidence builder and gets them rolling. I don't know. You know what I mean? But I would start to get those young guys in there and develop them, because if the O-line is going to be porous, I can live with it much more so if it's very highly talented true freshmen that are going to be part of the building blocks of your program for years to come.
Well, I would just like to see some of these younger guys like you're talking about. I mean, we heard about Pup Howard all year long. I don't even know if he played. And then you have all this offensive linemen with all the struggles they're going through. Why not throw in the young guys with fire that actually want to play and see what happens?
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree with you, man. I'd agree with you. I agree with you 110%. And this is the time to do it, right? I think Furman, Jacksonville State, you'd like to say Vandy, but I mean, dude, at this point, I'm not even going to sit here and say that's going to be some beatdown of a game, right? I'm not right now. Not right now, I'm going to say it. So this is one of those games I think you need to take advantage and get your young guys out there and give them that opportunity like you just mentioned. So.
All right, man. Well, appreciate you taking my call, man.
Yeah, man. Great stuff. I appreciate you calling in. Really good stuff, guys. 843-790-3377. I know our guy Aaron over in Oregon's been trying to call. I see that Oregon area code coming through. You want to keep buzzing the lines, my man, 843-790-3377. We'll take one more call before the break. Of course, guys, week 1 of college football concludes tonight. Clemson taking on Duke in Durham. What chance do y'all give the Duke Blue Devils to pull the upset? Let's jump to the phone lines here.
Call from
Robbie Davis, Zaxby's Hall of Famer.
Robbie Davis, what's going on, my friend? How are you?
Well, aside from the horrific game Saturday night, I'm doing fantastic on this Monday. How are you doing?
I am doing fantastic, my friend. I appreciate you asking. What's going on?
Okay. I kept up with the stats every time they showed them on TV, okay? And Rattler played his absolute butt off, okay? And like one of the callers said, right, if I remember correctly, they need to stop putting this on Rattler, okay? If it's on anybody, it's on the defensive and offensive line coaches to why we got beat Saturday night. It's on the coaching staff as a whole, as a matter of fact. Scratch that. It's on this coaching staff as a whole. You've had over a month to get these guys ready to play North Carolina, and you play like this. I saw better offensive and defensive line play when I went to the Charleston Southern and North Greenville game on both sides of the ball for both teams.
Yeah, it was ugly, Robbie. It was ugly. 9 sacks, -2 rushing yards when you factor in, the sack yardage. It was ugly. It was ugly. There's no doubt. I mean, I knew that, offensive line play would probably be a deficiency this year, could be a problem, what have you, but I never saw that coming. I never saw that coming.
Yeah. I mean, if there's ever a time for you to get your act together, it's this week. And if I was the offensive line coach, I don't know who it is, but if I was the offensive line coach, I'd be like, every offensive and defensive line, I'd be like, your jobs are at stake here. You starters, at this point, you're not starting. We're going to find out who wants to be here, who wants to play some football and win some freaking games. Because we do not want another situation like what happened this past week.
Yeah, I mean, you'd like to think you could push Furman around, but at this point, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I know you got a couple of those FCS guys on your offensive line. Maybe playing an FCS team will channel their talent and their skill, but. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's
also like you said. I noticed that Spencer Rattler was very. He didn't try to overdo it. He took the check down when it was there. I don't know why on God's green earth he took the check down on a 4th and 20 something. What were you thinking? Besides that, he played a pretty darn good football game. Okay. But like I said in the offseason, a vehicle does not go anywhere without the engine, and the offensive line is the engine, and the engine did not help us any.
I mean, Robbie, per your call a couple of weeks ago, man, it sounds like playing offensive line is pretty easy, but it didn't look easy Saturday night.
I think what happened is I think the blocking scheme was not working. Personally, if it was me, I'd be like, just put a hat on a hat. Find somebody in a different uniform and knock them on their ass. Screw blocking schemes. Just find somebody to block and put them on their ass at this point.
Indeed. I love it. Hey, somebody get the message to Lonnie Teasley and Shane Beamer.
And real quick, shout out to Noah Johns because yesterday was his birthday, so shout out to him.
Shout out to Noah Johns.
If you're
indeed.
listening, shout out to you, my friend. But I will be at the game this weekend, and I will cheer my lungs out if I have to. I'll leave the game hoarse if I have to. I don't care. I'm gonna try and help the boys beat the dog mess out of Furman this week when I go into Willie B this weekend.
Give them hell, Robbie. They'll need you. They're gonna need you.
Personally, I would try to put up 90 if I was South Carolina. Take out the frustrations on Furman and beat the shit out of them. But I'm going to go ahead and get off of here. You have a great rest of your day. Go Gamecocks and go Blue Devils, baby. Go Blue Devils. Go Dukes.
Well said as always, Robbie. I appreciate you.
You too, buddy.
Great stuff,
right,
man. Yeah, we'll talk soon. Good stuff from our friend Robbie Davis. Guys, we're going to jump into a quick break on the other side. I want to continue to hear from you, more of your questions, comments, calls, and more. You're tuned in to The Daily Crow. The Daily Crow is brought to you by our friends at Carolina Cigars. Carolina Cigars has been in operation since 2008, recently taken over by the Peterson family in 2020. Whether you're new to the cigar scene or whether you've been enjoying cigars your entire life, Carolina Cigars has the expertise and knowledge to make your visit to their shop enjoyable. Stop by for a fine cigar and experience their classic cigar lounge where people come together, share conversations, and become friends. So if you're into cigars and you're on Hilton Head Island, you really do need to go by and see them. They offer same-day shipping nationwide, free delivery island-wide for weddings and all special occasions. They're also proud to offer premium cigars at 9 outside humidor locations around Hilton Head Island, and they have special events throughout the year as well. They want to talk to you. They want to engage. They want to share with you their cigar selection they're very proud of and their beautiful cigar lounge. When you're in the Low Country, there's only one place for cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, and there's only one place I get my cigars. That's Carolina Cigars, Hilton Head Island's premier cigar merchant. Come and share your passion. It's all here at Carolina Cigars. Give them a follow on Instagram at Carolina_cigars, or give them a call today at 843-681-8600. That's 843-681-8600. Smoke them if you got them, and tell them that Chris from the Spurs Up Show sent ya. The Daily Crow is also sponsored by Rhine Law Firm, LLC, principally managed by James R. Rhine Jr., located at 1350 Ashley River Road, Suite 650, Charleston, South Carolina, 29407, serving the greater Charleston area.
Muscle Dougie, ho.
All right, guys, we're back here on this Monday, September the 4th, 2023. Appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Taking your questions, comments, calls at 843-790-3377. That's 843-790-3377. Our guy Aaron is blowing up the phone lines, trying to get in. Aaron, continue to call if you can. Would love to chat with you. Either way, we'll get into some of your YouTube comments, some of your YouTube questions. Again, 843-790-3377. Philip Harris says, I think the quick slants and dump off stunted Clayton and it didn't adjust accordingly. Edge play is clearly a problem as well right now with all of our issues we knew coming into the season. No doubt, edge is a major concern. Spur your enthusiasm. Or let's see. Let's go back a couple. Spur your enthusiasm. This could easily be the game we look back on like, damn, if we just could have won that game, we'd have been in the playoffs. He says this team is talented enough offensively from a skill position standpoint that if we can find a way to give Spencer Rattler time, we can turn around everything. From your lips to God's ears, my friend. Let's jump to the lines. Sean, what's going on, man? How are you?
Good, man. How you doing today, Chris?
I'm doing fantastic. I appreciate you asking. What's up?
Well, I left your voicemail disregarded. I got a little wild on it. But, hey, man, I just wanted to call in. I had a few things. So, the first thing was, even as atrocious as the game was, I noticed leading up to the game and throughout the game, ESPN did nothing but gargle Drake May's balls. And, like you talked about, the stat lines, they might not be, it doesn't mean everything because, Spencer Rattler threw no touchdowns, but he also threw no interceptions and threw for 353. Drake May threw 2 interceptions. And that was when the defense was able to get pressure on him. But I was just curious what you thought about that, the nonstop gargling of May's balls and no one even tickling Spencer Rattler. But also, another thing was I remember calling in about a month ago talking about, it feels like it's an upset year for Georgia. And while it might seem absolutely crazy, if the offensive line can limit to like maybe 5 sacks instead of 9, hey, dude, it might be a chance. We saw a slow start for Georgia against the Cupcake. And I don't know. I think it's still out there. And then the last thing was I typically don't get on social media, but yesterday I was doing nothing but doom and gloom. Season's over. We're absolutely fucked. And for some reason, I made the poor decision to go to X or Twitter or whatever. And I noticed there's a ton of people out there who are shitting on Shane Beamer and using this little clip of him talking about the Chain Gang. And I just want to know what you think. Like, why is everyone panicking and freaking out on Shane Beamer? Is it just because they hate it? Because he's such a happy guy? Or what's going on? But anyways, man, appreciate what you're doing. I loved the call-in show the other night. And don't forget, it's the biggest week of the year. Beat Furman, baby. Go Cox!
Hey, Steve, you're the man. I appreciate it. Great stuff from Steve. Let's break down that entire call. First off, why is Shane Beamer catching so much heat and so much hatred on social media? I mean, I listen. I think when you have a guy, you've seen it happen with Clemson and Dabo. When you've got a coach that is so, Shane Beamer wears his heart on his sleeve. He's very emotional, right? And that's after both wins and defeats. And so when you have a guy like Shane Beamer who is so emotional, is so charismatic, and he's a guy I think that sort of, I mean, it's going to be like if and when Deion takes his first big L, right? Like he has this charismatic type of nature that just sort of attracts it. And, I think people, I'll say this specifically about the chain gang thing. And I know it's blasphemous to be a Gamecock and say even a single critical word of Shane Beamer. I like Coach Beamer a lot, but guys, I talked about this weeks ago. Like, the way I'm curious to see his evolution with the media, because he still, to this point, gets far too emotional. And he still, to this point, takes unnecessary shots and says more than he should at times. Like, say what you want, but like complaining like that and throwing a shot at the chain gang for some reason in the post game, it's just not necessary, man. It's not necessary. Like, this tone of pouting after you lose, it's just like, he's a great winner. Like, Shane Beamer is a great winner. After South Carolina wins, it's awesome. Like, nobody's better with the media in the post game than he is. But after he loses, I think there could be improvement. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. And so I think Shane Beamer, that's why he catches so much heat is because, he's so charismatic and so over the top after South Carolina wins with some of the things he says and some of the ways he acts. But he has this edge about him with the media and just has a really shitty attitude after things do not go well. And it's got to be fixed. I think it would benefit Shane Beamer a lot to change his tune, to change his attitude, to not take unnecessary shots at folks. I mean, guys, we've seen it time and time again. He loves to go at the media. This guy reads Twitter. He reads message boards like nonstop. He knows what everybody is saying. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if tomorrow, like, I'm fully expecting Shane Beamer to take that podium tomorrow and say doom and gloom, find some joy, whatever. Like, no, just shut up and go win a game. Like enough, dude. Like, stop coming at fans for being fans. Stop going after people that it does not help you as a head coach to bitch about the chain gang in the postgame when you just got your ass kicked. It doesn't help. So I'm not throwing shade at Shane Beamer or saying that he should be getting, that he should be getting thrown through the ringer as much as he is on social media. But I get why people are doing it, guys, because a Gamecock fan, you're a hypocrite. And South Carolina fans will be doing the same thing to Dabo Swinney if the roles reversed. If Dabo Swinney loses to Duke tonight and he comes out in the postgame and says the chain gang this, bro, Carolina fans would have a field day with Dabo Swinney. So I get it, man. To his other point about beating Georgia, God bless you. From your lips to God's ears, I hope it happens. Again, I think you're reading way too far into Georgia, quote unquote, starting slow against a cupcake. I mean, South Carolina is probably a 27.5 point underdog against Georgia. I'd be willing to bet you right now that's probably where the spread sits. Probably where the spread sits. Guys, phone line's back open, by the way, 843-790-3377. And then finally, I honestly forget his first point. Oh, the Spencer Rattler, Drake May thing. I mean, I definitely think May caught more attention and more love in that quarterback battle than Spencer Rattler did. That's just kind of what happens when you're Drake May and you're a preseason top 5 projected quarterback in the NFL. And we talked about this, guys. It's no surprise that Drake May was viewed more positively nationally than Spencer Rattler. Justin, what's going on, man? How are you?
Doing good, Chris. Hey, Chris. Hey, man. This morning, man, Chris, I was pissed off yesterday, man.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still pissed today, man. I think we all have a right to be.
Yeah, and Chris, let me tell you about Shambier. Let me tell you, man. He said here's something funny about Shambier, Chris. Hey, they were having that. They would try to move him. No, the referee's in hot dogs. That was kind of sad. Are you kidding? Chris, pass me a beer, please.
Indeed. No, indeed. It was a tough one, Justin, but I think the boys will rebound and Furman coming up. I think that's exactly what the doctor ordered, Justin. I appreciate the call. We're going to keep it moving. A lot of calls coming in.
Tommy.
Here we go. Tommy, what's up, man? How are you?
Hey, Chris, how we doing, brother?
I'm doing fantastic, man. I appreciate you asking. What's going on?
I'm just trying to recover this loss, I was just calling to see how do we allow, 9 sacks against a weak UNC? How are we going to be able to stop Furman?
Yeah, I have, how are we going to stop Furman? Thankfully, I don't think Furman's quite to the talent level that a North Carolina is. But no, listen, man, it's, especially, man, like it hurts worse because, if we were coming into week one and folks and Gamecock Nation, I felt like was actually giving North Carolina credit and taking them seriously. I'm getting cooked by my own fan base for even just acknowledging that maybe this will be a tough game and that North Carolina could have improved defensively or they could have improved. I'm getting wrecked by Gamecock Nation. And so maybe if there wasn't this delusion and this crazy optimism that South Carolina was going to win 49-14 or 47-29, that it was going to be a walk in the park. If there wasn't that, then maybe it'd be an easier pill to swallow getting your teeth kicked in by North Carolina. But that's what makes it sting even more, man, is there were so many people in this fan base thought it was just going to be a walk in the park. UNC sucked. And it's like, well, if UNC sucks, then what is South Carolina at this point? Like if everything the fan base said was true.
Terrible at this point.
Right. Exactly. So I just that's what made it, I feel like, even worse is you disrespected your opponent. You disrespected your opponent for weeks and weeks and weeks. And so now it's like, well, where do you go now? Like what is there to say now? You know what I mean? So
I don't think we have a shot in hell defending Georgia. I think they're going to come. We're going to go in and they're going to kick our damn ass. I think that's the way we're at, and I'm just ready for damn baseball season at this point.
I hear you, man. I hear you indeed.
Hey, one last thing, Chris. Can you give my sister Candace a shout out for her birthday, please?
Yeah, Candace, happy birthday. Absolutely. Go Cox.
Yeah, Candace dick fit in your mouth.
I love it.
All right, see you, Chris.
You got me. Thank you, Tommy. Appreciate it. Tommy got me. The Candace joke. A classic. Let's see. Austin Gregory 0 for 15 on the YouTube comments today. Dude, the comments are going crazy, man. I don't even see your comment. Damn, Tommy got me with the Candace joke. I feel like if you're doing this long enough, that's going to happen. Let's open back up the phone lines, guys. 843-790-3377. It's 843-790-3377. Let's try to get to some of, again, lots of comments rolling in. Jeff Madison, Beamer needs to look at the mirror and say the offensive line sucks because I recruited the players. Let's jump the lines here. Aaron, what's going on, my friend? Apologies for taking so long to get to your call. What's going on?
Ain't no big deal, man. I know. Listen, I want to say congratulations because I tried to get in after the game, and you had like 1,100 people watching the stream. You deserve it, man. You put in your work every freaking, you do your thing every day. But I just wanted to call. I was in Salt Lake City, and I saw that beat down too. Salt Lake City ain't a half bad town. You got a lot of talent there.
Yeah.
And when you like 6'5", 270, you get a lot of looks.
Mm-hmm.
But
indeed,
I was going to say, anybody who knows anything about football, right? When you're deficient on the offensive line, defensive line, you got no running game. It makes for a long season. Okay, I think Spencer Rattler. I think is the best quarterback, talent-wise, to ever play at the University of South Carolina. Can he not get frustrated with the state of the offensive line and the running game and the offensive game plan being one-dimensional? I expect him to step up in week 2. Of course, it's against Furman, and I think the Georgia and the Tennessee game are really going to be telling. And I wrote this in the chat. This is a couple of weeks ago. But any team with a decent running game, any team with a decent defensive line is going to give this team a world of issues. It's going to give them a ton of problems. Outside looking in, I don't know if North Carolina is that talented defensively. I mean, we have to research it. I know Chiswick is I wouldn't say upper echelon defensive coordinator, but he's a good one. I just don't know if that defensive line is all that great. And the defensive lines are only going to get better coming through. Of course, you got Georgia. Of course, you got Tennessee. Texas A&M is going to give it a world of trouble. Clemson is going to give it a world of trouble. But if you keep saying that, that's saying that the offensive line won't improve when you know they will. It's just going to take reps and game time and recognition. They always improve. So we'll just see what's going on. I just don't. I heard all these people talking about nine wins, and yeah, if they get to 6, like that should be a thumbs up for Beamer. But we'll just see, man. That's why we talk about it and they play.
No, Aaron, I mean, I agree with him. Listen, I posed it right after the game that how does this loss reset expectations? And I think for a lot of us and those of us that had realistic expectations for the season, for example, I mean, I picked 7-5, and I think South Carolina, I thought that the Gamecocks, UNC was 50-50, and I thought of UNC and Mississippi State, South Carolina would lose one. They would not lose both. So we shall see if that is the case. I'd like to think that will be the case. I think 7 wins, it's possible that it's still attainable, but I think you're absolutely right, Aaron. I mean, if you're one of those that Garnet Goggles fanatical was picking 9-3, 10-2, Saturday night you got bitch slapped with some truth serum, and you need to look in the mirror and realize that Carolina football is not what you think it is or what you thought it was coming in this season. That's just flat out. At this point, nothing less than a bowl game is acceptable, but this is not a 9 or 10 win team by any stretch. This is a program that's still building under Shane Beamer. We tried to preach all preseason long that success, it's not linear growth. And after, basically the ball bouncing your way at every turn in year 1 and winning 7 and every way in year 2 and winning 8, you can see, and it's only one game. It's only one game, but it was not going to shock me if there was a step back in regards to total wins, because at some point, that lucky horseshoe got shoved up your rear end, or the luck of the Irish, whatever your bank, it runs out. Eventually it runs out, and there's nowhere to run. There's nowhere to hide in the SEC. So I think South Carolina could still get to 7. My best case scenario in the preseason was 8 wins. I think it would take a massive turnaround. Is it possible? 8 wins is absolutely possible. But I think more so realistically, the priority right now is just making sure you get to another bowl game. That's the priority. Anything beyond that, in my mind, is gravy at this point.
I just don't know. Like, they aren't talented on either line. And Huntley's not Huntley, the Hemingway boy, his whole family. As far as I played basketball in Columbia, and you've heard about the Hemingway family, and I think they're in Hemingway, close to the beach. That Hemingway boy, just his last name makes him good. I bet that he was good at everything because their whole family since the freaking mid-'90s have been good. But they're deficient on both lines. And just think about every team that you've ever seen play football ever. With that, when you're deficient on both lines, you don't have a running back. Spencer Rattler is great, but is he going to get frustrated? Is he going to get frustrated with the state of the offense and try to go full gunslinger? That's going to be if he can settle down and just listen, I'm gonna take what the defense gives me. I'm not gonna take as many chances, and if I do take chances, I'm gonna take my chances with Wells or Leggett. And just to say this, B Mac told me 2 years ago. He personally told me that Leggett was a freaking monster. He showed one game. He showed that he could be off the chain. But yeah, is he going to step up? Can he take what the defense gives him? Can he quell his frustration and just play football? And that's going to be a lot to ask if that offensive line really doesn't improve. Now, let's say if they go youth movement, there are going to be some headaches. But I expect after halfway point, I expect the offensive line to be a little better. That defensive line, though, it's going to give this team trouble because they can't get any pressure at all. And I'm not sure if North Carolina's offensive line is that good. We'll see. I'm going to let you get some other people calling, man.
Aaron, to the man, well said as always, man. I appreciate you. Looking forward to chatting with you all season.
All right, man. Hey, congratulations, man, because 1,000 people in a live stream after a game is a ton of people. Do your thing, bro.
I appreciate you, man. You the man. Take care. Great stuff from our guy, Aaron, 843-790-3377. Guys, I'm going to do this for you. We're not even going to jump into one final break. We'll keep it rolling because we got a lot of folks trying to call in right now. Y'all want to keep it coming, keep it rocking. We won't jump into the break. And a lot of questions to get into as well. You guys have left so many YouTube questions. Guys, this is why you want to join the Big Cock Club, though. Patreon.com/Big Cock Club, or click the link in bio to join the Big Cock Club and get in the Discord. If you want your questions answered, my guy Austin Gregory, for example, leave them in the Discord. That's why we have a TDC questions channel, so I can see your questions separated from the YouTube stuff. Let's jump to the phone lines here.
Call from
Wes.
Wes, what's up, man? You're on the air.
What's up, man? I think I'm just as disappointed as everybody else is. Aside from that, I don't think there's something that no one else is talking about that I have been scared of for the past few weeks before this season even kicked off. One of our biggest trap games, 100% in my mind, is having Mississippi State sandwiched in between Georgia and Tennessee on the road. That their defensive line is full of seniors. And besides the Kentucky game before Clemson, which I think we could handle that and get it done, that Mississippi State defensive front might do worse to us than North Carolina could have done if we had nobody on the line. So I really wanted to get your thoughts on that Mississippi State matchup. And if you think that if we perform decently better against Georgia, if we have a shot against Mississippi State, because everyone's writing Mississippi State off. And I've been quietly paying attention to them, and they are sneaking around. So I wanted to see what you thought about that game coming up.
Well, ironically enough, man, you bring that up. I mean, I don't know if you saw this. I picked that as a loss in the preseason. So I'm way ahead of you in the sense of, I don't think that's going to be a walk in the park by any stretch. And I agree with you with the whole trap game perspective. I don't know if that will apply quite as much anymore because, that Mississippi State game, you hate to overuse the term must win, but I tell you, man, if you don't win that game, your season's going sideways in a hurry because, not to take the dramatics out of my prediction, but you guys know I'm not going to pick the Furman upset this weekend, right? So you're going to beat Furman. You're going to lose to Georgia. So you're 1-2, man. If you lose to Mississippi State, I'm not joking. I think you're staring a 4-win season in the face. 5-win season, maybe. That's a game you have to have. And admittedly, I looked at Mississippi State in the preseason and UNC, and the reason I picked the way I looked at those two games was this, because I picked both of those as wins. But I picked Mississippi State as a loss, UNC as a win. Reason I did that was I viewed Mississippi State as North Carolina with a better line of scrimmage. If they've got a better line of scrimmage, right? And by all accounts, they should. I mean, They've got veteran dudes in the trenches offensively, defensively. They've got a comparable quarterback to Drake May and Will Rogers down there in Starkville. They've got a fantastic running back. They ran for over 200 in game one. They're going to run. They're going to run the football. So, I'll just say this about that game, though. What I first thought of as being a sleeper game, a trap game, if you will, I could see that now being the game where South Carolina backs against the wall, right? You get beat down by Georgia. Everybody's writing the season off. And South Carolina does what they've done the first 2 years of Shane Beamer, which is it just seems like when this team is down and out and they're counted out and they're big underdogs and everything's against them and if the adversity strikes, they play their best. So it would not stun me if that happened. And we got a long way to go until that. I mean, tell me whether Juice Wells is playing or not. Tell me if Nicky Manwari is playing. Like a lot of those things will factor in. But, if this – I'll tell you this too. If this South Carolina team is sleeping on anyone in any game, they're not taking as serious as a trap game, that's a problem in itself, man, because this team is not good enough to sleep on anybody.
That's true. And it seems like every season we have a game where we shouldn't win it, and we do, and a game we shouldn't lose, and we lose it. And that's always been crazy to me. But my only other question is, do you think we need some black magic this year? Because Beamer is yet to let us get some black jerseys, and me and my buddies are getting frustrated that we ain't got no drip.
I would love to see that. I know, and on the other note of that, I know nobody wants to talk about it, but those helmets on Saturday were atrocious. We were doomed for the start, my guy. Hey, I appreciate you calling in, man. Let's hope for some black magic. Maybe this upcoming Saturday. Who knows? Appreciate you. Let's jump to another call here.
Cole.
To accept, press.
Cole, what's going on? How are you?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. I appreciate you asking. What's up?
I just want to say I'm disappointed in the North Carolina loss, but I do want to say it could have been worse. And I say that because when you look back in the first quarter and early in the second quarter, they could have easily put up another 2 touchdowns on us, man. I mean, we got lucky that it was close, but they had a lot of drops in the red zone, and it was ugly. But
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something too that maybe folks aren't accounting for is like, there were UNC had just as many missed opportunities as South Carolina did. When you think early, couple fourth downs, they went for it, and it was just, I mean, dude, it was an ugly, abysmal performance all the way around, and unfortunately, I think there's a lot of things that you look at that game and you take away, and it's are they going to be fixed? Can they be fixed? I mean, a team's greatest improvements week 1 to week 2, but there are some things that are, a cause for concern. There's just no other way to put it.
Yeah. And I also want to say, I listened to the show from yesterday, and there was a lot of heat on Loggins and that play call on the 4th down.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, just kick the daggone field goal. Second of all, when you look back at the play, that was a check down pass. They had men pretty much on the goal line down there, and they were covered up. So you can't really put that on Loggins. I mean,
yeah,
we had men down there, but they just, Rattler checked it down. So I'm not taking up for the guy. I'm just calling it how I see it.
No, I mean, I think that ball's got to be just thrown to the end zone. That's just, I know they're covered, but it's 4th and 19, dude. Like what, I mean, you got to score there. Like what, yeah. So, I mean, it's maybe it's unfair to say like the play call wasn't good. Maybe just the execution was not good because again, you want to complete the pass, but you want to get the first down. So.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think he should have chucked it down there. Because, I mean, it was basically touchdown or bust for that play, right?
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
He definitely should have chucked it down there instead of hitting his chick for 10 yards or whatever.
Yeah.
Full crowd, so. I don't know, man. It was, I get the O-line taking heat, but it was just damn ugly all over. The secondary was terrible. I know you lost D-Man Worthy, but it was, they were shooting holes in us left and right, man.
Indeed. Yeah, tough one, man. A tough way to open this season for sure. Tough way to open this season for sure.
On to the next one.
Yeah. Indeed. Hey, Furman coming up just with the doctor order for this group, I think. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
All right. Take it easy, man.
So, all right, brother. Hey, I appreciate the call. Thank you so much. Great stuff again, guys. Thank you all so much for calling in on this Labor Day. A lot of folks chiming in on Labor Day, and y'all could be out there doing anything, and y'all are hanging out with us. And again, I truly do appreciate it. Again, 843-790-3377. That's 843-790-3377. Let's see. Guys, again, joining the Big Cock Club is the way to go if you want to make sure your questions are answered, because we have so many in the YouTube chat that it is hard to get to them all, to be totally honest with you. Let's see. Big Wash. The fan base got humbled this weekend. That's all to y'all. That's all to it. Y'all underestimated UNC's abilities. Ryan Miller, South Carolina better step it up. No one wants to pay to watch a team play like crap and lose. Yeah, I wonder what the home atmosphere is going to look like this weekend. I just, admittedly, I wonder. I mean, the season's not over, okay? The season's not far from over. There is a lot of football to be played, and South Carolina can make strides and improve, and absolutely it can happen. Absolutely it can happen, right? But it is concerning what we saw. And as I mentioned, the offensive line stuff, like I just don't know how much can be fixed. I mean, it can't be any worse. So it can be better for sure. But, you know, I just there's no tougher way to start the year. You know what I mean? Like there's been nothing but talking about the last 3 games last year and the win over Clemson and Rattler against Tennessee and people's dreams and hopes and expectations running wild of winning 10 games or 11 games. And again, if you're in that crew, you know, there's a lot of 10-2 folks out there that, again, got the bitch slap of reality of, hey, this is not what you thought it was, put it that way. So reality comes either way, and you have to either accept it or, you know, or get hit by it. So Mantis says, what is there to look forward to this year? It feels like it's a mentality of just get us to 2024, see what the freshmen this year and next year plus the portal can do. I mean, again, we're through one game, Mantis. We got a lot of football left. You look at the issues on this football. I mean, I think the mentality is win as many as you can. I mean, bottom line, it's win as many as you can, and, you know, try to make strides in the line of scrimmage, and you know, success is not linear, right? Success is not, it's not all just judged based off of how many wins you get, but I cannot picture many worse ways to lose than the way you did. I mean, really, like you got obliterated. Like it just, and nobody wants to hear it. I told you guys after the game took place that, unfortunately, whether you like it, dislike it, which we all hate it, the Beamer and Muschamp comparisons, that combo's only heating up at this point. And that final results on Saturday night, it felt very Muschampish. It did. Pissing down your leg in a big moment, you know, crapping yourself on national TV and playing your worst. That felt like a very Muschampish result. That's, again, I'm not telling you that Beamer and Muschamp are the same person. They are far from it. But that result, the way South Carolina played, that's what it felt like. So a lot of season to be played. You can turn it around. You can fix some things, and there will be adjustments made for sure. And now you've got tape to look at. But I still, guys, look back at Saturday and I think to myself, I just don't know how South Carolina could have gotten dominated to that degree by a UNC team that I think is a very good team. I don't think they got enough credit from South Carolina fans, but like, by all accounts, they were not great on the line of scrimmage last year, and they took you to the woodshed, start to finish. So I don't know, man. I don't know. That's why they call it Therapy Monday here on this Monday. So that's why spur your enthusiasm. 10-2 ain't dead, Chris. spur your enthusiasm. That's what makes you awesome and makes you great. And I'll leave it at that, man. Bryce, I could never. I guess you and I are not wired the same, my guy. I could never. You got more optimism than me. So it is what it is. Guys, we're about to hit 3:00. Again, make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Hit that bell icon so you get notifications of when we go live and when we drop new video content. Also, be sure to hit the subscribe button on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, where you get your podcast. We drop the podcast every single day at 5 p.m. Eastern. So be sure to check us out there. Guys, in the meantime, appreciate you all tuning in. Thank you all so much. Enjoy the rest of your Monday. Happy Labor Day to you all. Thank you all for tuning in, and we will talk to you all on Tuesday.